Councilmember Carol Perstuck is on video with us. We're going to start with a roll call, then we're going to have the invocation led by Pastor Rob McKenna of the Bridge Church, and then Councilmember Drew will lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Drew.
Here.
Councilmember Nicole.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Perstuck. Councilmember Perstuck.
Here.
There you go. Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Here.
And Mayor Boyles.
Here.
There you go.
Thank you. All right, and if we could all please rise, and we'll ask Pastor McKenna to come up and lead us in the invocation, please.
You guys got me twice in 1 month. Let's pray. Lord, it's always a special moment for me to be able to come and pray over our city before a council meeting. And Lord, I'm thankful that we're able to do this. And I pray tonight, Lord, as I always do, just for wisdom and discernment, Lord God. Your word tells us to lift up our leaders, Lord God, to pray over them. And so we do that. We pray that you bring discernment and wisdom to all that they do in their decision making. Lord, I know we're coming into an election, and I pray, Lord, that you would guide that as well. And Lord, thank you for this great city. Thank you that you watch over it, that you protect it. We always give thanks, Lord God, to our first responders, fire department, police officers, Lord God. Thank you for all that they do, and for our city, those who take care of it and watch over it. Lord, for our schools, for our children, that you protect them and keep them safe, our teachers and administrators, Lord God. Father, thank you for families here in El Segundo. Lord, thank you that you watch over them, keep them safe as well. And Lord, tonight we just ask that you go before us, Lord God, that you lead the way. We're thankful for this time. We pray this in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor McKenna. Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you, Councilmember Drew. We got some special presentations this evening. First up, we have recognition for Kite Pharma, a Gilead company. And I think, Mrs. Voss, are you going to introduce, or shall I? Yeah, okay. Gilead Company on the 5-year anniversary of FDA approval to produce cell therapies to cure cancer, and Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel is going to read the commendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, commendation. Whereas Kite, a Gilead company, is the global leader in cell therapy and has a presence in El Segundo since 2016, recognizing the city's proximity to LAX and freeway access as essential for facilitating the company's state-of-the-art cell therapy manufacturing process. And whereas Kite, a Gilead company, has continued to expand its El Segundo footprint from the original building at 2355 Utah Avenue to leasing supplemental space as part of 2383 Utah, and then to fully occupy both buildings, and now having constructed an addition to connect both buildings, and building a new warehouse, giving the facility a total building footprint of 203,000 square feet. And whereas Kite, a Gilead company, employs more than 800 employees in its El Segundo facility, including functions such as manufacturing, quality, process development, supply chain, facilities, engineering, business operations, finance, human resources, and IT. And whereas Kite, a Gilead company, currently produces 2 innovative cell therapies manufactured at the El Segundo facility for both clinical and commercial purpose, and is believed to have pioneered the position of a cell therapy specialist, revolutionizing the biotech industry. And whereas Kite, a Gilead company, is licensed to manufacture cell therapies for patients in more than 20 countries around the world, and already has produced individualized treatments for approximately 9,000 patients. And whereas Kite, a Gilead company, received its commercial manufacturing license from the FDA 5 years ago today. Now, therefore, on this 18th day of October, 2022, the mayor and members of the City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, hereby celebrate the 5-year anniversary of Kite's El Segundo facility being approved by the FDA, and commend Kite, a Gilead company, for producing innovative cell therapies for patients battling cancer, and with sincere appreciation for the company's dedication to research and development of new biopharmaceutical treatments. Wishes further success with the company's continued focus on the cure. Thank you.
And Mayor, members of council, we have Joseph Roth and Mitra Cruz from Kite, And I just wanted to add that when I started working here 7 years ago, this was the big deal that Kite had moved to El Segundo. And since then, as you read, they've expanded significantly and now have 800 employees. So we're just really thrilled to have Kite here, and the work that they're doing is literally saving lives. So it's a wonderful addition to our business community. So if Mr. Roth and Ms. Cruz would like to come up for a moment to accept.
Good evening, Mayor, City Councilman members, and staff. I'm Mitra Cruz, site head of Kite's El Segundo facility and a 6-year veteran at Kite. So I actually joined Kite when we were Kite prior to Gilead buying us. I wanted to thank you for the kind words and welcoming us here. I wanted to also take a moment and introduce my site leadership team that's here. Jen Brown, Reza Rahimi, Harsha and Priya and Joseph, who you also met. So again, as you mentioned, Kite was actually founded in 2009 in Santa Monica, and El Segundo was picked for its strategic location to LAX, and it has been a fantastic journey, you know, to being able to serve over 9,000 patients out of a facility. I know when I signed my offer letter, it was supposed to be sci-fi, and this is never going to happen, and here we are 5 years later, and going strong. So again, I wanted to thank everybody. We're thrilled that we're celebrating the 5-year anniversary of our FDA approval, and wanted to thank you again for your hospitality through the years and for the special recognition tonight. So thank you. Yes.
Can we get some folks on that side too? And after the photo I take, if we could shift just down a little bit. There we go, there we go, there we go. Okay, and after this photo, Ms. Ravella's like a photo also. Here we go. Let's see, I got it back up a little bit. All right, 1, 2, and one more. Thank you so much. One from Ms. Rivera.
For the city social. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, next up, we have a recognition of a member of the fire department. So, Chief Lee, please.
Mayor Boyles, Member City Council, Fire Chief Dina Lee. I'm here tonight to recognize our Fire Marshal, Nicole Pesqueira. She just completed an 8-month leadership academy with All-American Leadership. The content included leading self, leading in relationships, leading in teams, leading in organizations, and concluded with the 12-minute legacy speech in front of her entire class and fire chiefs. I'm proud of Nicole for this accomplishment, and I look forward to watching her grow as a leader in our organization.
Congratulations. Can we get like 1 minute of the 12 minutes?
Is this why the smell is going on?
No, I'm just kidding. Whatever you'd like to say, though, seriously.
That's why
Yeah.
the smell's coming from?
Would you like to say a few words?
Just that it was an honor to be able to actually participate in this journey. Being a new leader here in El Segundo, I found this training to be just valuable. It was so great to be able to network with a bunch of fire service members, and to be able to put El Segundo out there, since it was a lot of big departments, so it was great to have our name out there as well. But I made a lot of great contacts, great people to reference if I had questions in my role, so it was wonderful.
Congratulations.
Thank
Should we do a photo, Chief? Yeah, please. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, a couple of photos. Could I get one of the council members to be on this side?
Sure, I'll get on this side.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, and a couple more. Very good, and thank you so much.
Next to normal size humans.
All right, last presentation of the evening is we've got a new IT director, Mr. George.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, it does give me pleasure this evening to introduce your new member of the executive team, Mr. Jose Calderon, who's our new Information Technology Services Director. And let me read a brief bio here on Jose. His work experience includes both private and public sector experience. He served as the IT director for the city of Evanston, Illinois, as well as a senior project manager for Excella, an enterprise services and delivery firm working with public sector clients. Jose began his career as a systems administrator, supporting technical operations for the Chicago Bulls and Blackhawks at the United Center. He's a Chicagoland native and relocated to LA in 2016. He most recently served as the senior IT manager for Raytheon Technologies right here in our city. Jose holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Management Information Systems from the Milwaukee School of Engineering and an MBA from Xavier University. So again, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Jose as our new IT director. And Jose, maybe come up and say a few words.
Mayor and City Council members, fantastic to be here in front of you. I think I've met a few of you throughout the last couple of weeks, but very happy to be here and very happy to still be part of El Segundo's daytime population. I've been working with Raytheon for the last 4.5 years and happy to still be in El Segundo with everyone here in City Hall. So looking forward to working with everyone.
Thank you. Welcome. What's
Thank
your
you so much.
favorite buffalo wing joint?
Buffalo Joe's on Clark Street.
Favorite burger?
For Edzo's.
Not Mustard's.
We're close.
Okay.
We're close.
All right, okay.
Evanston native.
Okay.
Evanston native. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right. We're going to make a change. Before we do public communications, we're actually going to move up item 10, which is a public hearing. Madam Clerk, okay with you? Yes, great. All right, so we're going to move up item 10, and I'm just going to start with a announcement that this is a time and place here to fix for the public hearing regarding the bargaining impasse between the City of El Segundo and the El Segundo Firefighters Association and the potential impacts of the Brownout, in parentheses, temporary suspension of Engine 32. City Clerk, was proper notice of the hearing given in a timely manner?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Our public hearing is now open. Mr. George, who will make the presentation?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to introduce our HR Director, Rebecca Reddick, who will start the presentation. We have a number of follower presentations.
Mayor and council members, tonight we have our labor negotiator, John Backett, from the firm AALRR. He will make a presentation on behalf of the city. This is John.
And if I might, just briefly, for so people understand the process, the city's labor negotiator will make a 5-minute presentation. The Fire Association then will be allowed to make a 5-minute presentation. And then the public hearing portion, well, it's all part of the public hearing, but then members of the public who have filled out forms and provided the clerk will be allowed to speak after those two presentations. And then after the conclusion of the public hearing, the council will deliberate on the item.
So I'd like to introduce John Backett.
Thank you. Good evening. Again, John Backett with AALRR, and we are here to provide a summary of the events that occurred during or over the last approximately 11 months concerning the city's decision to Brownout Engine 32 for a 6-month period of time. It is a temporary trial period, and that is the sole purpose of the discussions as well as today's deliberations. So I will be going over the background on the bargaining history and the discussions with the FFA. And when I refer to FFA, that's the El Segundo Firefighters Association. In addition, there will be some discussions concerning the city's responses to the impacts and effects that were identified by the FFA. So once again, the sole issue was browning out Engine 32 for a 6-month trial period. And the parties being the city and the FFA, met 11 times between November 2021 and April 2022. And I'm not going to go over each individual meeting. I'm just going to highlight a few of the meetings. The first meeting occurred on November 22nd, 2021, where the city provided the FFA with the written proposal. On December 8th, approximately 2 weeks later, the brownout was discussed, and there was, in fact, a belief that there was an agreement already in place concerning the brownout based on some input to Chief Lee, the fire chief, concerning the decision to brown out Engine 32, and the basis for that belief was safety valves for mental health. There were some discussions about firefighters being overworked, not having a good work-life balance, and this was supposed to be one of the many benefits of browning out this engine in addressing forced overtime and not being able to enjoy days off. Approximately March 7, 2022, this was roughly towards the end of bargaining. The FFA asked if there was a price tag on the brownout of Engine 32, if they were willing to accept it. When the city advised that there was no price tag for that, we ended up in what we call declaring impasse in the bargaining, and the city's LBFO, which is the last best and final offer, was rejected by the FFA on May 11th. And on May 31st, the FFA requested fact-finding, which is their right to do under the Myers-Milius-Brown Act, or the MMBA. And the FFA had identified 2 impacts and/or effects of browning out Engine 32 as the basis for the fact-finding, or the request for fact-finding. The first one was safety of FFA members. The claim was that by browning out Engine 32, it will put their members' safety in jeopardy because their members may have to wait for outside agencies to respond as backup in order to begin attacking a house fire. And the second issue that was brought up was the potential for increased workload. And the sole example cited by the FFA was an increase in fire inspections that will need to be redistributed to the staff. So we'll start by addressing the first issue, safety of FFA members. The city explained that it certainly expects all FFA members to adhere to the current safety standards in the fire department's policies and procedures, which include, but is not limited to, minimum amount of personnel at structure fires, et cetera. So there is no impact as it relates to the firefighters being asked to do something different or to enter a fire with less personnel. The second point that we addressed was many of the FFA's what-if scenarios were actually very speculative in nature, and some of the information that we shared with the FFA, as well as with the fact finder who issued a decision after a full hearing on the merits where both parties were allowed to bring in documentary evidence. In 2020, only 2.1% of major incidents in the city of El Segundo involved fires, so 51 out of 2,426 incidents. In 2019, it was approximately 2.17% of fires, 61 out of 2,811 incidents. And in 2018, only 2.2% of major incidents involved fires, or 64 out of 2,908 incidents. And just one of those sub-points under these statistics is, of these 64 fires in 2018, only 15 involved building fires, while 8 involved a structure fire other than a building, as an example of the breakdown of the 64 fires that were reported in 2018. Regarding the second point that was brought up, the increased workload for their members, the only example, again, cited by the FFA was an increase in fire inspections that will need to be redistributed to the staff. The city made it clear to the FFA and the LBFO, their last best and final offer, that in the event members are unable to complete inspections as a result of the browning out of Engine 32 for a period of 6 months, FFA members will not be subject to discipline if the goals for building inspections are not met. Now, to be clear, one of the benefits, although we're not here to discuss the decision, but rather the impacts and effects, one of the benefits of browning out Engine 32 is being able to fill in for firefighters that are either out on injury or out on vacation. The fact finders criteria pursuant to Government Code Section 3505.4D is, two of the relevant ones here are public welfare and conditions in comparable agencies. And the public has an interest in having well-rested and alert firefighters responding to emergency calls for service. Personnel taken away from service or taken away from Engine 32 will be redistributed, filling vacancies without forcing members to work overtime. And again, the public has a vested interest in the efficient use of public funds. Regarding comparable agencies, the FFA has not provided any information regarding similar working conditions in other agencies. So I'm going to skip to the last one because I'm running out of time. The fact finder did find that there's nothing in the MMBA that precludes the city from providing or moving forward with this plan. And as a result, it is the recommendation for the city to move forward with implementing or imposing the 6-month trial period of browning out Engine 32. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next up.
City Clerk, I would note that you started that about 2 minutes late. I would give Mr., whoever the Fire Association is bringing forward, I would give them 7 minutes. Just
Okay, 7 minutes to the representative of the Firefighters Association.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. My name is Jeff Gurney, President of the El Segundo Firefighters Association. Council, thank you very much for this opportunity to present in front of you, present in front of the public. I'm going to be giving kind of, I do want to address a couple things. One, we never asked for a price tag. We never asked if this had a price tag on it. I do know that that was an informal conversation between our lawyer and the city's lawyers. We never would ask if there's a price tag on it, but that's typically what lawyers do. Secondly, fact-finding, the purpose of fact-finding, unfortunately, only allowed us to argue for how it affected us, our workload, and our safety. Initially, we tried to argue for the public, the community. It was not allowed. That's what I'm going to do here tonight, though. All right, Engine 32 brownout. 2022 data. Let's start with the hard facts here. We average 8.3 calls this year. Engine 32 responds to three to 4 calls per day. Overlapping calls, 27% of the time we have calls that happen simultaneously. That basically means that we rely on outside agencies to handle additional calls coming into El Segundo, almost 1/3 of the time. Total call volume is up 13% from 2021. Fire calls are up 7% from 2021. Engine 32 has responded year-to-date 950 calls, up 21% from the same time last year. Yes, 2.5% of our total calls are fires. May sound like a small percentage. That equals 60 fires year-to-date. That's averaging 1 to 2 fires per week. 28 of these fires happen in Engine 32's first-in district, PCH and East. And the incident loss value so far is close to $500,000. 10-year call volume data. Total calls for the last 10 years, up 26%. Fire calls, up 53%. Overlapping calls from 2019 to today, on average, 32%. Again, right in line with 1/3 of our calls. The only reason we have 2019 is because prior to 2019, we don't have those statistics because we moved over to emergency reporting. More of a visual on the 10-year call volume with a trend line. Going up, 26%. Fire calls, up 53%. Rescue calls, up 28%. I'm not inflating calls here. These are legit calls. rescue calls, fire calls. These are our concerns for shutting down Engine 32. There's going to be a delay in arrival of an initial engine company to Fire Station 2 district. You get rid of Engine 32, that means Engine 31 from here, from Fire Station 1, has to respond to a fire in District 2. That's over 2 miles away. That's a delay for initial fire attack and initial fire ground operations. There's going to be a delay to the residents here in District 1. You eliminate Engine 32, their backup fire attack. They're the backup resource on all major incidents. Manhattan, 3 miles away. County, Redondo, LAFD, you're going to be asking other agencies to give us a fire engine to supplement what we're potentially cutting tonight. These delays put the safety of victims and the occupants potentially in these major incidents and the firefighters at risk during these major incidents. Mutual aid resources, they rely, on different standard operating procedures. They have different radio communications. They have different training. An interesting fact here, in 2010, we asked LA County Fire District to do a risk assessment when we were thinking about contracting out to LA County. In 2010, LA County found that within their own regional model, an engine and a rescue at Station 1 and an engine and a truck at Station 2. That's when we were operating with less than 2,200 calls, a 40% less call volume. And again, that's within their same regional model. Same SOPs, same communications, same training, not mutual aid. Shutting down Engine 32 increases the liability to El Segundo by creating delays in response times and potentially increasing the loss value. I got 3 minutes. I want to discuss, I understand this came up in the 11th hour, and I know you have heard of it. It's our proposed staffing model. We worked diligently and collaborated with Fire Administration to come up with an alternative staffing model. Why it came in the 11th hour? Because we continued to not believe that this is needed. We were struggling to argue for more staffing. We never thought that we would have to argue to keep staffing, the current staffing that we have. So in the 11th hour, when we realized that this is most likely going to happen, we decided to work with Fire Administration to come up with an alternative staffing model to meet the directive of council. Unprecedented. We want to create an ambulance operator program. We convert Rescue 32 into 2 BLS ambulances. They work 56 hours a week, at-will employees at $18 an hour. It takes 4 months to create and implement. Unprecedented, a labor union willing to eliminate 6 full-time firefighter positions, reassigning the paramedics to the heavy apparatus, keeping Engine 31, Engine 32, and the truck, and creating a captain's position. Here are the benefits. Reducing the 5 employees, a grow your own program that we can pull from the high school and surrounding local schools. All patients continue to get transported to El Segundo Fire Department, increased cost recovery, and keeping paramedics in the city. This also increased employee morale. Here's real quick, the long-term savings. Structural savings, almost $700,000. We've been negotiating this issue for almost a year. The moment's come to make this generational decision. In a time when we need it most, where the city has been identified by the mayor himself as the most important 5 square miles in the South Bay economically, that city that rests between 2 major active fault lines, why are we cutting fire and rescue? Where is the continued investment? It feels like a budget squeeze. It feels like we're forcing the department to challenge the status quo, which can be a good tool, but right now, this is a wrong move. Especially when we have provided a better solution. And if you're going to do this, at least acknowledge that this is a cut in service and safety to the community. There is no fiscal crisis, there is no staffing crisis, and there's no mental health crisis. If you mean to shut down Engine 32 tonight, at least understand you'll be reducing and weakening public safety. If nothing less, if I haven't convinced you to reconsider, at least postpone your decision until you've had time to fully read and understand the new El Segundo Fire Department Community Risk Assessment and Standards of Coverage report that has just been published tonight and available online. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Gurney. All right, that's it for presentations. Mr. George, Mr. Hensley?
Yes, that is, Mayor.
Yes, and at this point, you would go to your
Public input. Yeah, so do we have a sense, Madam Clerk, of how many people would like to present? One, okay. You want to read the name, please? Thank you.
Michelle Keldorf.
Oh,
Hi, gentlemen. My name's Michelle Keldorf. I live at 736 Bungalow. I'm also next door neighbors with Jim Bulgarides, who I know submitted comments to you directly. He's a longtime El Segundo resident, a former city council member, and also a paramedic fire captain with Ontario for quite a while. And I just want to echo his sentiments, which I would reiterate to you. I would ask that City Council reconsider the temporary brownout of Fire Engine 32. While I understand the need for financial prudence, the noted cost savings to go towards capital improvement projects, I think that there are a number of other ways that do not impact our public safety response time that we can go about making those adjustments. You've heard me talk about it before, a very expensive sign on Main and Imperial, use of consultants to create budget, to create redesign of Rec Park that then gets shelved, the use of consultants to explore the downtown civic center redevelopment plan that also gets shelved. Let's put consultants to the side for a bit and really focus on making sure that our response time is not impacted. I believe that there are other ways to go about this, and I would ask that you make that consideration and don't impact our police response time in the process. I think we have another plan that seems like they're really doing their due diligence to be able to get to the same cost savings without doing something that, while there might only be a 2% chance that it happens, if it does, given where we live, it could be catastrophic. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Keldorf.
Samantha Lee?
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Samantha Lee, the mom, not Samantha Lee, the teacher. I just want to clarify that. There is ongoing confusion in this town. As most of you know, I've lived here for 37 years. I've never come and spoken before this body before tonight. That should tell you how passionately I feel about this topic. I literally heard about it for the first time less than an hour ago. Picking up stuffed pizza, saw all these people, what's going on? Okay, figured it out, here I am, which I would love to stay for your discussion. I will be watching it on YouTube, but I have to go to basketball pickup. Please don't do this. Don't make this decision. At least don't make it tonight. Give the rest of these 16,000 plus residents who live here an opportunity to come down and express their disappointment that a last best and final offer that you guys offered 6 months ago during what was supposedly an 11-month negotiation is now being rushed through at this point to consider a temporary brownout? No, this is public safety. That's why I live here. That's why I raised my 3 children here. I personally used them when I was pregnant and I passed out in the post office when it was on Main Street. They transported me and my unborn child to a hospital. Was it anything major? No, but they were here. They did it. If there's only one here and they have to cover something over there, what happens the next time some poor pregnant lady passes out? Do they make it in time? Mine was nothing serious, but what if it had been? I urge you, do not make this decision tonight. Give the residents an opportunity to come and give you thoughtful consideration with the job we have tasked you with by being our elected representatives. We live here because we want to raise our children here where it's safe and wholesome, and doing this is not providing the public safety that I sacrificed to buy a home here for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lee. Looks like there's no more public input. We will make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to do so?
The public comment portion.
Yeah.
So
Public
moved.
hearing, yeah.
Nicole, so moved.
Thank you.
Giroux, second.
Okay, all those in favor, oh, voice vote, I'm sorry. Want to start with, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, Councilmember Drew. Councilmember Nicole?
Yes.
Councilmember Perstuck?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
Yes.
Mayor Boyles?
Yes. All right, thank you. Council discussion.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest, just because the fire service is so esoteric, that we go over a little bit of the nomenclature about what we're talking about here? There seemed, especially from Ms. Lee's comment, some confusion about trucks and engines and ambulances and what this actually entails. We're not discussing ambulance service or total staffing, right? It is the mix of the different numbers of fire engines and ladder trucks that we're discussing. So it might be worth just revisiting that And I don't know if that's for us to do on the dais, or do we want
No,
someone
I
from the
think,
fire
I think it'd be good to
department?
have someone from staff. Yeah.
Yes, if I can have our fire chief come up and describe that.
So the current staffing here at Fire Station 1 is Engine 31 and Rescue 31 ambulance, which respond to fires and medical calls, and also the battalion chief is at Station 1. Station 2 has Truck 32, which is the big aerial ladder truck, Engine 32, and Rescue 32, the paramedic ambulance. So the ambulance and the engine are a company that respond to EMS calls.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that they were clear that the number of ambulances here is not at play. We're talking about the mix of actual firefighting equipment.
The engine, yeah.
We can certainly bring her back up. Did you have a question, Councilman Nicole?
Well, I think it was more clarification if the chief could give to the public with regards to what exactly this means. And I think the historical background on this, that, you know, this dais asked through budget conversation for the fire department to find $1 million. At the time, city manager Scott Mitnick and yourself and Joe Lilio from finance worked together and put together this plan and presented this plan to this body as, let's do this for 6 months, right? It's going to be a pilot program to see what happens, right? And at the time, it was supported by the city manager and by you, but at that meeting, we had a discussion, and it was that, like, yes, you've agreed as the chief to go forward with this, but you do have concerns. And I think it's important that we explain to the public also, how many men and women are we talking about? Like, you brown out an engine, but there's how many firefighters and engineers are on that engine, and don't they get onto the other vehicles? And so how many staff members would we have today, and how many staff members would we have tomorrow if this was imposed?
So when the initial conversation happened last November, we were going to go from 14 to 11. And then when we readdressed the budget and that I had concerns about having not 4 firefighters on a heavy apparatus, and I spoke with each council member and city manager, and we will move, when engine 32 is browned out, we will move the engineer from engine 32 onto truck 32. That'll make it a 4-person truck. The firefighter will move to engine 31 right here. That'll make it a 4-person engine for safety for the firefighters. The browning out will be of just the 3 captain positions, so that the savings will be of those 3 overtime for the captain's position. And then we also at the budget meeting, we froze the emergency management division for additional savings. And that was what we decided with for the 6-month brownout, the staffing.
And then, to my understanding, from time to time, we've had to brown out this engine simply because we couldn't staff it, correct?
So we did brown out the engine when we had, I think, 5 or 6 vacancies in the engineer rank. So typically when you brown out an engine, it's because you don't have staff or you need to save money. So we had talked about that at that time, we didn't have the staffing.
So were the residents of El Segundo at risk when we didn't have the staffing? Because the presentation that we just got from the FFA was that if it's browned out, that we're at risk. And we're hearing the public's concern about browning it out because we're concerned that we're going to be at risk. And yet we have lived with this engine being browned out on numerous occasions because of lack of staffing. And were we at a higher risk on those occasions? Were the residents even made aware that it was going to be browned out for certain periods of time based on staffing? I mean, I know for us, I don't think we got a memo stating, you know, FYI, today we're not going to have engine 32 online due to staffing issues. And so I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to make sure that the public understands the full picture here. So can you give us some color commentary on that?
So I don't know how to put this, that when we were still using the engine at that time, we were having personnel we call it like a light force, where we only had 2 personnel on the engine, but they would join the truck and the rescue ambulance on a call. So it wasn't really a true brownout, but we were running short 1 position. So yes, we did do that for about a period of 5 months, and we were still able to give service to the community. We've looked at all the data, and I'm going to continue to analyze the data of if there are delays in response, or the information that Jeff Gurney gave is accurate as to the overlapping incidents and the number of calls and fires and so on and so forth. But we have looked at several staffing models over the last year, and I think what we're trying to do is come to a compromise on what would be the best service for the community.
The light force that you referenced, so the engine was still driving around, how many total firefighters were staffed that day when that engine was on light force?
2 on the engine.
I don't mean just that, I mean in total.
So 13.
And what are we proposing now with the brownout of the engine? How many would be on staff every day?
13.
So why was it never proposed to have the engine 32 be light staffed?
We can do that.
I'm just curious, why was that never proposed? If that meets the same requirements, because when you dive into the budget,
Yeah.
right, and some of these numbers are staggering. It's like we budget every year, in your budget, there's $2.1 million in overtime built into that budget. Okay, just built into that budget. And how many firefighters do we staff on total?
Each day?
No,
Or-
just
So
on our staff.
40.
40. So if you take $2.1 million, you divide it by 40, that's a lot of overtime, right? I looked at that and the way my mind thinks, it's just very straightforward and pragmatic, and I'm thinking, well, if we have all this overtime, why don't we just have more firefighters? Like, I don't understand why we have so much overtime built in, or why do we have these situations when we have, we can't, because I know you refer to it as force hire, right? We force hire firefighters if someone's out sick or someone's on vacation. We need that engine or that truck staffed. We have to force hire them, and that could cause overtime to incur. So it's built into there, and I'm trying to understand.
So the reason it's built in is because we have to have 14 firefighters in those seats 24/7. If people are sick, on vacation, or on long-time injury, or we have not promoted or recruited for firefighters, then it's always overtime. One strategy is to overhire, and then you just fill in. That's the strategy that some fire departments take, so that you reduce the overtime. But if you want to have a constant staffing of 14 firefighters, that's just how it happens. That people are going to call in sick, people are going to be on long-term injuries or illnesses, or we haven't been able to have promotional recruitments. Like right now, we're doing a paramedic test, but we have 4 vacancies in the paramedic rank. So every day we're hiring paramedics at time and a half to fill that spot.
Because I just looked at that number and was thinking to myself, gosh, if we had one more firefighter, or if we had a couple more firefighters and we weren't charging overtime, you would have hit the mayor's $1 million number a long time ago on not paying the time and a half, right? Just using simple math. I had a couple other questions, but I feel like I'm hogging the mic. I think this is important, because Ms. Lee just said it, right? Response times are going to be slower. So explain to me, because does it take longer for the firefighters to get on the engine if there's more firefighters on each truck and each engine for those engines to get to the homes? Or is it meaning that the response times are going to be slower, or it may be delayed when they can enter a structure fire based on the number of firefighters that they need on site, right? Because there's a minimum required firefighters on site before anyone can go in, right? 2 in, 2 out, something like that?
That's right, yeah.
So how many firefighters are needed? My house is on fire. How many firefighters need to be on site out front before you guys can go in?
4.
That's it. So if one engine with 4 firefighters show up, then 2 guys can go in?
Yes. You can make entry, but we need 17 firefighters to put out 1 room on fire in a 2,500 square foot house. That is what we need for all of the positions that need to be filled on one structure fire.
So no matter what though, right, like right now, how many firefighters are currently working right now this moment?
14.
14. So if a house catches on fire, we need mutual aid to show up to put it out,
Yep,
right? So no matter what, we're waiting for someone else to get here.
yes.
Okay, and if there's a high-rise fire is completely different.
Yeah, we
right?
need a lot more.
We need a lot more people, so we're waiting for mutual aid. So the model, no matter what, requires mutual aid, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Man. I mean, in the past, you know, I supported you on this, and I said no, I didn't want to brown it out. And looking at the numbers, I'm now looking at it thinking, gosh, I wish somebody would have proposed light manning of that truck, because then the engine would still be there. But we'd be able to hit these budgetary goals that we have. And, you know, because again, to my understanding, no one's getting fired. No one's being sent home, correct?
No.
Right, so all the men and women that we love that wear the uniform, they're all still gonna be here on a regular basis, working their normal, just not like, I guess some of the overtime will be cut off, right? Okay,
So we would just be sacrificing, I think it was 66,000 for the O&M for the engine, the fuel, and the maintenance.
but the engine's still gonna be there.
We can do that.
If someone needed to get in that truck, if there was play this out with me. There's a high-rise fire, right?
Yeah.
And we have our 13 here, if this goes forward. We have our 13 here. High-rise fire. Is someone getting in engine 32 and driving it to that high-rise fire? Okay, so the engine's still there. It's not being sold. It's not being decommissioned, put out the pasture at the yard, right?
No.
It's still going to be
We can do
in
that.
Station 2. Okay, I might have more questions, but I'll pass off to you guys.
Thank you, Councilman Nicole. I don't have any questions for you, Chief. Yeah, we've been talking about this for quite some time, 14 months. I think there's been 11 meetings with the Firefighters Association on this very topic alone, so I have the information that I need. You did an incredible job, Councilman Nicole, laying it out in detail. Thank you.
No, Scott kind of basically said everything I was trying to get across. I think the important thing is to realize that the engine's not going anywhere. We have the same amount of staff. A pilot program is put together so that we can learn something from it. And we've said from the beginning on this, if it's determined that there's a problem, we can pull this pilot program at any minute, at any time. The reason why we didn't permanently put this in is because we wanted to do the right thing. We wanted to study what is possible, what is acceptable, what we can still maintain our level of service with. So what this is about is basically learning what's possible. But at any time it can be pulled. That's why I understand the feelings of the Fire Association. I get it, I really do. We do have budgetary issues that we need to address. This is a way to look at something without it being permanently put in place. So for the reasons that were already laid out, I don't see a reason why this should not go forward as a test program or a pilot program. Because it can always be pulled, and then the other, you didn't get a chance to the like kind of plan B, if you would, as far as the second installment there. There's a lot to that. There's a lot of good things to that. It's gonna take a lot longer to go through that, and maybe that is something we look at going forward. But for right now, we've been going over this for 14 months. Before you actually became chief, we actually started talking about this. So I just come time 14 months later to start putting into action what the plan is. Thank you.
If I may, just, I take my job as a fire chief very seriously. It has been my pleasure to serve this community for 20 years, and I want to continue to deliver great service. Of course, I support the firefighters. They're here day in and day out, and they'll risk their lives for you, and they are there for you on your worst days. I also support the city council, and I will respect the decisions that you make and work with city manager on implementing the plan. This is a difficult place that we're at here.
Chief, we look to you to provide us subject matter expertise in firefighting and life safety. You know, leave the budgeting piece, like that's not your decision, right?
Thank you.
You make recommendations to us based on that. I would add two things. One, and I know it was somewhat lightly touched on, that because of the unique manner in which fire departments are staffed and the staffing model works out, we budget, you know, $170,000 per month in overtime, which is, no one would run a business like that, right? But that's unique to the fire service. We budget that, but that's not what we spend. I mean, we almost double that. And I think that's something that it's incumbent on us as, you know, the fiduciaries of the city. We have to interrogate all of our things, right? We have two competing items, not competing in a way that they're in a healthy tension, but competing in a manner, right? Public safety is job one, but job two is doing in a value-driven model. $300,000+ a month in overtime is kind of crazy. But I have a question that's on that is, when we talk about the response time here that's uniquely affected is fighting fires east of PCH, right? Because that's where we have to send an engine over to marry up to the truck to fight fires east of PCH. So question, and it may not have an answer at hand, is those 2% of fires that we are fighting, those 2% of calls that are fires, where are those? Because I get a sense from, and we get the report, right? I get the sense that a lot of those aren't in El Segundo.
I can get you a detailed report on those 12 building fires. I can send you the addresses.
I mean, because that does make a difference, right? Because of response time on mutual aid and those things, if they are LA County, if they are Manhattan Beach, if they are in one of our neighboring cities, that is part of our calculus in going in this, because that's the response time that's being affected, is firefighting, structure fires east of PCH, because that's what will be affected by this. So I think that there's some value into that piece of information, but then I just don't know, right? I mean, these are anecdotal things from me looking at the fire log where I see emergency, no vehicle, emergency, no vehicle, and go down the list. I'm not living it the way you are. So that is just a question I would have, that answer may not be at hand this evening.
Yeah, I can get that report to you tonight. It's the easy report.
Sorry, one just quick clarification based on that. The EMT calls are not affected on this. Is that correct?
No, we'll have Truck 32 and Rescue 32 responding to EMS calls in Station 2's district, and you'll still have Engine 31 and Rescue 31 in this district.
Okay, so I think it's important for the public to understand that piece of it too. It's because I know there's a lot of information out here right now, and there's a lot of things going on, and it's a highly tense situation. But in the end, the EMT piece of it, which I know majority of the people in town are concerned about, is not going to be affected by this change.
I don't think so. It would be, you know, we'll look at the overlapping incidents in the middle of the night, but I'm proud that we consistently are at your door in 4 to 6 minutes in Station 1 district and Station 2 district, and I want to maintain that. I'm proud of that.
So do we, 100%. I just wanted to make sure, because when we start talking about these things, we're talking about structure fires and where the structure fires are happening. It gets a little cloudy for people who are listening on it, that's all. But
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention something. So, to your sentiment about wanting to, continue to provide safety to this town, and to Mayor Pro Tem's statement about, you are the expert on fire, right? You're the CEO of the fire department. This is a pilot program. To Councilmember Giroux's point, it can be stopped at any time, right? That means that we're going to look to you to, if something is wrong, if something is not working, and you see something that it's like, hey guys, no, we did not foresee this. This is an unforeseen consequence of this decision, and it needs to be addressed. I would hope that you would bring that to the city manager immediately, and I would believe that, because we've done it before, we would host a meeting as soon as it could be noticed to the public, and have an emergency meeting to make whatever changes need to be made to ensure that the residents of El Segundo are safe, taken care of, protected. and again, I'll just say, I really wish when this was first presented that Engine 32 light force would have been presented with it, because that would have accomplished the exact same goal without taking one of the units offline. But that is not what's before us. That's not what we've spent 11 months talking about. That's not what we did fact-finding on, and that's not what's on the agenda tonight. So we can't vote on that, but I can still say how disappointed I am that that is not an option. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I just want to add that if you look around us in the South Bay, cities are looking at different solutions, different service providers. Redondo Beach, considering it, again, Hermosa Beach already gone to county. I know that there wasn't the appetite in 2010. I don't think any of us up here, even though we have the authority, if there were a majority of votes to go county, we don't want to do that. We're looking for ways to reduce our expenses, and to think that we don't have financial structural issues ahead of us. Business license tax, second most important revenue stream. And if we think that everyone's going to re-sign their office leases the same way they did pre-pandemic, ask around. It's not happening. So we can make financial shrewd decisions now and think about the future of the city for the next decade and keep our fire agency in-house, or we're going to have more difficult conversations to have in the future. I see this as a win for all of us. That was interesting. A way to keep the agency here for the long haul. So I want to thank you for being courageous. I know you're in a tough spot, Chief Lee. I want to thank the firefighters, because I know it's going to be uncomfortable. And I think we need to decide whether or not we're going to read this. Did you want to make another comment, Mayor Pro Tem?
I did one more thing, Mr. Mayor, and that is the potential staffing model that the FFA put out there, I think is not in opposition to this. I think that's something that warrants a significant amount of study, and I think that is a tremendous display of forward thinking by them. So I think that regardless of what we do here about this pilot program, that is something that warrants a great deal of investigation.
I agree. And for the public, I believe the primary notion there is to go to EMTs as opposed to paramedics as a service model, correct? Mm-hmm. Yes, and thank you for that as another option to pursue in the future. Councilmember Perstuck, anything to add before we go to a vote and read the resolution by title?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. We need to take a vote as to whether or not to read the resolution by title only. Do we have a motion to do so?
Giroux, so moved.
Thank you. Second?
This is a procedural motion.
This is the procedural read.
Just so that you can decide whether to read something by title only. This is not a vote on this item.
Second.
Okay, voice vote, Madam Clerk.
Pimentel? Sorry. Councilmember Giroux?
Yes.
Councilmember Nicole?
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
Yes.
And Mayor Boyle?
Yes.
Okay, you can proceed.
All right, City Attorney, would you please read the resolution by title only?
Yeah, and I just might add, so there's because of some confusion. Normally during the agenda, there's an item where the council votes to approve reading titles or resolutions and ordinances by title only, and that's what we were just doing, a housekeeping matter there. Now, for the resolution with regard to the topic that the council was just discussing, a resolution authorizing implementation of the terms of the city's last best and final offer to the El Segundo Firefighters Association, IAFF Local 3682, El Segundo Fires, or ESFA, pursuant to Government Code Section 3505, that SEC is ready to be adopted.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
City Attorney, quick question. What would the rescission date be on this once the sundown? Is it 31 March, or what's the effective dates?
Well, it's going to take effect and be in, the program will be in place from 6 months from the date that it's actually, that it starts. And I don't know that we have the exact start date. I mean, but when it does, I mean, there's going to be, do we have, I mean, John, do we have an exact start date? Or I assume that the chief's got to sit down and actually plan out the shifts and the schedules or whatever's going to happen, and they'll start it sometime relatively soon, and it'll run for a 6-month period.
Yes, okay. I think there's going to be some further discussion as to the actual implementation, but it should be relatively soon to account for the scheduling and everything associated with implementing this.
I would advise that it does, if there is a significant delay in this, and it looks like it's gonna overlap with fire season, that is something that we would want to reconsider.
There should be no significant delay.
Very well.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
Giroux so moved.
Do we have a second?
Persick, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, voice vote, please.
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nicole.
Yes.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Vote is 5-0.
Thank you all. Get situated with the agenda here. We went out of order to hear that earlier. Okay, we will go back to public communications at this point, unless, Madam Clerk, you have another suggestion. It's good? Okay.
No, that works. And you have one person so far.
Okay, now is the time and place for public communications. We're gonna limit it to 30-minute time total for all speakers. So who would like to go first?
Barbara Briney.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Briney, and I live at 509 Nevada Street. I was thinking earlier about how many times I've come to council, and mostly it's about working on trying to get something that will better our community. And again, maybe this will better our community, but it's at certain expense that I'm really here because I'm kind of upset. My family moved to town over 50 years ago. My parents worked very, very hard to be integrated into the community. They spent their money in the community. They bought property in the community to be able to offer a way for our family to exist, and also for them to have a stream of income. And so they put their time and their effort into the community, and they purchased, not a lot, but they purchased a fair amount of real estate. And so we have always been very grateful to be able to be in El Segundo. With that said, it came at a great cost. They spent a lot of time and effort and sacrifice so that they could do that. I am now looking at second generation, and I now work with my mother in trying to take care of these things. And so you know that this is family-owned and managed real estate. This is not something that we take lightly. We offer opportunities for people to live in our community that makes it more diverse and easier for them to be able to continue to be here. But with this flyer that came today in the mail about the business license tax, which we have consistently paid for many, many, many years on our properties, I started doing some figuring. I have a 6-unit apartment building, very small, 6 families that have given to the community, and I realized that my business license tax it's not a big deal, and for me, it's not a big deal. I am more than happy to pay my fair share, but I am not willing to see a 677% increase in my business license tax for next year for a 6-unit building. I am only allowed to raise my rents a certain amount. This raises my rents well over what is allowed. So where's it supposed to come from? You know, we're talking about families that I'm going to have to say to them, I'm really sorry, but you're going to see this amount of an increase because the city doesn't explain very well. And I'll be real honest, right here it says the specific use of these funds would be determined during the city council budget process each year. So what's that given me? And what's that assurance for my tenants that I'm not going to have to go back to them time and time and time again? I have one other building, and I'll use that one as the example because it's astounding. I have a 14-unit building, 14 families again. I pay And I'm happy to pay, and I'm happy to even see the increase. I understand an increase, that's not a problem. I am looking at a 926% increase. Figure that out. How can you do that? I'm gonna have a really difficult time. So I wanted the community to understand what this means. It's fine for other businesses. You look at your own businesses and see where that's gonna come. But I know from ours, this isn't workable. Does that mean I'm gonna have to look at getting rid of our buildings? I'm telling those families they're gonna have to move out? I don't know, I don't want to. But I think that it's really kind of sad when the city, on the backs of small businesses and families, it's trying to raise money, again, to cover all your expenses. I get that part of it too. But at these kinds of rates, it's very, very sad. I'm sorry, but can't go along with this one. And I just think that it's imperative that the community knows what they're looking at for this. Thank you.
Council.
Before you go, Mrs. Briney, can I talk about this or not? Because I just wanted clarification on what that percent equated to in absolute dollars.
No,
for the property.
I'm going to take responsibility for this. This conversation should not have, communication should not have happened at a council meeting. This is, at this point in time, it's on the ballot. This is election. This is political activity. This is not city business at this point. On the street, these communications can be had. You can do all of the politicking you want, but in this chamber during these meetings, and I've been making that statement before each meeting, and I failed to tonight. I'll take responsibility for that, but this is not the place for discussion of ballot measures or people running for council or the merits of items on the election.
Without talking about merits or pros or cons, can we?
You're going to get into an argument of is that percentage correct or isn't it?
No, that's not.
Well,
don't anticipate. Just one second.
Okay.
You've already been in discussion with different group stakeholders in the community. So can we talk about that?
No.
Okay.
This is.
Thank you.
I'm
for
happy
your comment.
to share my information for our particular properties, but I also want you to know that it has the City of El Segundo logo on it.
Okay.
So you're sending
if you
this
could
out.
leave that, if you don't mind, Mrs. Briney, leaving that with the clerk.
No, I'd like to keep it,
Okay,
please.
you can keep it too.
Thank
It's
you.
fine. I didn't get. Okay. You got one today. Okay. Thanks. All right. Any other public comments? All right. No, go ahead.
I'd like to speak as a resident. Jeff Gurney, 916 Dune Street. I just wanted this last bit of opportunity to address some of the things that were addressed to the fire chief, especially regarding overtime. I've been in this conversation for over a decade. Every year, overtime's an issue. The fire service is unique. We have overtime built in. It's the way we operate, so we can give El Segundo the same level of service 24/7. Someone calls in sick, someone gets hurt, someone takes vacation, we need to fill that position. It's the unique nature of the fire service. It is a high number, I understand. It's the same reason when someone posts our salaries in the newspaper and says a firefighter made so much money. It's because we work 56 hours a week, and potentially those firefighters that make an exorbitant amount of money worked 2/3 of the year. It's about hours worked. I'm a firefighter. I've been working for the city of El Segundo for 16 years. I make $41 an hour. I don't think that's exorbitant, but because of the nature of my job, and if I have to fill in to keep the level of service for El Segundo up to that level, I have to work in what we call it leave replacement. So we try to separate it from the private sector idea of overtime. It's not, it's leave replacement. Secondly, the staffing issues that we deal with here, we've been addressing with administration for years. The reason I feel like we're at an unfortunate solution at the end of a problem, because if we staffed appropriately and we had active lists every 2 years and had a list to pull people out off of and put into the ranks, we wouldn't have long-term leave replacement. Even though leave replacement is actually cheaper than hiring more employees, paying benefits, paying pensions. One of the other questions that we didn't really get to is the fires east of PCH and East, District 2 of El Segundo, Fortune 500 companies, Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop. Does eliminating engine 32 affect their insurance rates? Do they know what's going to happen? Do they have to readjust? How does that affect them? And lastly, one of the concerns that I have as a resident is, might be tongue-in-cheek, but every temporary government program often turns permanent. Happened with engine 33 right up here in 2009 that we lost. And we're continuing to lose fire engines in this town when we're growing. More and more calls, more population. Are we not getting 400 units Pacific Coast Commons soon? The calls are going to continue to grow. I agree with being creative. I'm not a traditionalist at fault. I'm ready to sit down and figure out what's effective and efficient for El Segundo, but I live here too. My family lives here too. The decision you made tonight is wrong. I know we've been deliberating for a long time, but that does not mean that you get to make that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gurney. All right, public communications. Anyone left for public communications? Doesn't look like it. We're going to close public comments. City manager, follow-up. Anything?
Yes, Mayor. I have two items that I'd like to update the council on this evening. First item, as you've requested an update at every meeting since we last discussed this, will be on the Hyperion water treatment plant. Actually, a number of items to report to you. I think I'll start off with, we've received a handful of emails, as I'm sure you have, about the odor uptick, if you will, being more significant the last few days. So we were able to gather from the staff over there at Hyperion that they are cleaning the settled debris from influent sewer pipes inside the plant and channels within the Headworks facility. And from talking to our Public Works Director, that particular facility is really the smelliest area, if you will, where they take in the waste and so forth. Hyperion reported to us that the cleaning work has already started and it's scheduled to last until December. This work will be carried out during the weekdays, excluding major holidays, roughly from 7 to 4 p.m. They are working on odor mitigation measures that will be taken into account to minimize all of the odor nuisance. So they are working on it. They're very well aware of that. And we've posted that information on our website by way of an update to address some of those recent emails we've been getting.
Elias, is that just caustic soda they're dumping on that to try and get that odor down? I think that's the oldest. I mean, that is. Sorry, I would talk influent.
Okay.
But.
Also, Hyperion and actually they're starting to get better communicative with us. Still a lot of work to be done, but at least we're getting some return calls, particularly our Public Works Director. Hyperion is working on implementation of the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee recommendations, the 33 recommendations, as well as updating their community and public information protocols. So they are aware of that and they're working on it.
Mr. George, sorry.
Yes.
How long ago was it that the three of us met with them? Was it 2 weeks now or 3?
I think it's been
any material change
3 weeks
in communication or outcomes as a result of that meeting?
Yes, actually, it's getting a little better, Mayor. In fact, the Public Works Director and I will be meeting with, in fact, this week, one of the other people that attended that meeting was from this Mayor Garcetti's office, one of his chief deputies. Her and the environmental person from the mayor's office are meeting with Elias and I this week. So that particular meeting, we were able to pick up on that relationship with his office. And this particular person oversees the functions there at Hyperion. So I think that's some good inroads to make. On September 8th, Hyperion staff detected an overflow of sludge from a primary sludge pump station and addressed the issue and contained the sludge. We had emails on that came out also, which was pumped back into the wastewater treatment system. Regarding the air monitoring system installation, 2 fence line monitoring stations have already been installed, and the installation of the 3rd one is going to be complete by the end of this year, so December 2022. Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant has to renew their National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, the NPDES permit. which needs to be renewed every 5 years. They're in the process of doing that.
Who approves that? Is that EPA or who's that?
That's the Water Board.
The local.
Water Board.
Right.
Okay. Is that a open public process?
Yes.
So how are we getting involved in it?
We will be involved. In fact, the public period comment for this basic permit has been extended to November 14th. So people have an opportunity to comment that up until November 14th. They've extended that, the Water Board.
And that body was the quickest to act on Hyperion with centering them previously.
Right. And again, we've posted this on our website. We have all of this information on our website. AQMD staff continues to evaluate compliance with the conditions under the order of abatement that they recently put in place. Preliminary review of the 24-hour VOC samples show the results to be normal and nothing out of the ordinary. So we just got those results yesterday. However, though, AQMD did issue one notice of violation for public nuisance this past Saturday, and so far 26 NOVs have been issued since July 2022. AQMD continues to tell us that they're receiving regular complaints, though. Finally, staff have been contemplating one of the things we've been trying to do is work with Hyperion to retain an outside third-party consultant to help with kind of identifying or helping us go through all of the mitigation measures that they're doing, where they are, how quickly they can be implemented. And so we've discussed about possibly retaining an expert in the field. And you may recall Dr. Michael Stenstrom, who is the chair of the ad hoc committee. We're reaching out to him right now to see if he would be interested in helping us pursue some of these more technical nature mitigation measures, and I'll be reporting back to you on how that goes.
I remember I think he was on our screen at one point,
Yes.
wasn't he? Yeah. Has he presented any findings and influenced city council at all? At LA City Council, has he been involved in any contentious issues with LA City Council?
I believe he was there when the report itself was presented to the Public Works Board of City of LA, but I don't believe that he has given many updates.
Well, the reason I bring it up is people in the public have asked for a lobbyist. We do have a lobbyist, but I think the concern there is he the right person to influence the city of LA and get them to actually act? So what you're suggesting is a subject matter expert, and my question would be, will LA City Council listen to this subject matter expert? And if you think the answer is yes, and then dovetailing, I'd want to hear, after you talk about that, Mr. Hensley, what's going on with the legal case, and do these two work together?
Yeah, from what I gather, and again, Elias can also chime in on this. This gentleman's a very well-respected expert in the field of water treatment plants and mitigation measures. I mean, he does this all over the country, I think, and has written books and so forth. So he's pretty well respected. So we feel a combination of an expert in the field, as well as us beginning to make inroads with the mayor's office in the city of LA, can help us gain some traction from a different angle.
How about organizing, and I mean this in all seriousness, having spoken at the LA City Council meeting once before, a field trip of sorts where we bring a bunch of residents to City Hall. I know they have their own issues going on right now.
Yeah, no,
and
that's for sure.
This is probably the least of their concerns, but nonetheless, we have to get them to pay attention, and it feels like everything's stopping with the staff of Hyperion. Hopefully this new deputy city mayor will help as well. But
yeah, great idea.
Because the residents keep asking us, what do we need to do? How can we help support this measure? And so I don't know if that interferes, Mark, with any litigation or not.
Just on the city of LA, and they meet generally daily. Their public communications don't resemble anything like what occurs here, where people who show up and want to talk to the council will actually get that opportunity, and will have, in most cases, 5 minutes to do so. If you go to a City of LA Council meeting, they give 1 minute, it's only to the first, I mean, I think there's like 30 minutes. You've got to be one of the first ones, and there are people that camp out who regularly go to every council meeting and talk to the council about all sorts of things. So I'm not saying you can't do that. It's very difficult to pull off that kind of thing with the LA City Council. Now, to my knowledge, based upon the communications that I've been involved in and what I've seen from the city of LA, I don't really think the city council in the city of LA this is not on their radar. I mean, this is not, the Public Works Commission is taking it up, but this is not on the city of LA's radar, and as we've discussed, none of their residents live anywhere near the plant, and so it just, well, it's quite a ways between, look at Mayor Pro Tem's face, but I mean, it's a good couple miles, I think, at least.
Well, District 11 they were active with the AQMD when it first happened because it affected them moving up the coast to Dockweiler. We lost, once Bonin announced he wasn't going to rerun, it lost its energy.
Right, so.
Wait, to that end, we did get an offer to assist from Denny Schneider, who used to be the president of RSAC and was ordered to be silent with their settlement with LAWA, but he is ready to assist us as well.
I think it's very valuable. Yes, I mean, I think that would be very valuable. I think whatever assistance we can get from City of LA council members would be great. As you know, they had some other issues recently, but maybe they'll focus on other things. Now, as far as the litigation and on that front, there are, I mean, it's a very frustrating issue for the residents, and I get it. And litigation is being there's some options that are being worked on. In fact, I don't want to disclose too much at the moment, but there's the potential option that maybe by the next meeting I can report on further that we're looking into as far as how to get maybe more of an immediate impact and a bigger impact through potential litigation. I mean, there is the short term here of people are suffering in their homes and the smells and dealing with that. And then there's the long term of this plant's not going anywhere and these issues are repetitive. And so on that front, we're having meetings with the local legislators for the state level over the next week to try to get legislation so that we can force the Hyperion plant to have essentially the same type of air monitoring system that Chevron does, where they're monitoring for all sorts of output of chemicals and not just the ones that they're choosing, which is hard to explain, but that's what they're doing. They have the hardware to actually measure all of the things that should be measured, but they're only choosing to measure some of them. Seems intentional. It is intentional. They don't want to measure things so that they don't have to explain things, is the way it appears to me. On the legal front, I think we're probably weeks away, and again, that's not going to be an immediate, I don't want people to feel like that's going to be an immediate answer to their problems. The judge is not going to go in and shut that plant down. That is not going to happen. But can we, where this is going to be really be focused, and if to the extent there's an expert that comes in and can help maybe move LA to be cooperative, is the process going to be, are they doing things in a professional and speedy manner given the impact they're having on the surrounding neighborhood? Are they acting reasonably given what they're doing to people? And the fact is, it doesn't appear to us like they are, but we don't know every detail of all their plans and how long does it take to do all those things to fix what they're doing. And they're being, I don't know, I'll stay away from getting too detailed about what they are and aren't doing because we don't know for certain based upon my conversations with staff. But that's really where the court is potentially going to intervene and say, you're going to provide this information and we're going to have this debate and dispute about, are you doing things in a reasonable fashion given the impact you're having on the surrounding neighborhood? And that will take months, if not a year, to get to someplace potentially. But that's, I mean, the other option is we sit back and we do nothing and it just continues because they feel no pressure. So that's not the option the council wants, and so we're trying to hit all the buttons we can. We first were really putting a lot of effort in the AQMD front on this, and And I think AQMD's working hard at it, but they've recognized they only have so many tools to do something about this. That is, they can issue violation after violation after violation, and City of LA doesn't really seem to care that much. So I don't know, I've talked a lot there. I'll be
No, it's
happy to
good.
answer
I
questions.
don't think you covered update with Senator Ben Allen's office, his staffer.
We're, my understanding, we're getting a meeting set up in the next week. There are emails we're going back and forth this week about getting a meeting set up so that we can be very specific about the legislation we want to try to get adopted during this next cycle, which will start in the next couple of months for the next legislative cycle next year, so that hopefully we can get the legislature to force the City of LA to put in the air monitors that they already have the ability to put in.
And I also have one other item, Hyperion related. This one doesn't have to do with odors though, but you also may have received some emails about some construction work that's been going on that's been causing neighbors close by to feel vibrations in their homes. Well, in fact, Hyperion has been undertaking a project where they're shoring up the perimeter road in the back of the facility. So in us following up on that, we realized that a portion of that road is in our city. So we immediately today went out and issued a stop work order. So.
Is that the road that we toured where they were putting that center monitoring
Yes.
station?
Yes.
So we do kind of want them to finish that. Or,
We do, but we want them to be, you know, we want them to come in and tell us what they're doing, and
Yeah,
so we
in
can
advance,
permit them. So we did issue a stop work order today on that.
okay.
Just a little color on that. So this is, I think it's another case of them not doing a good enough job or a reasonable job communicating to the public and being there. You know, the public was made aware that work was going to be done. Consultants were out. They had like a meeting at the end of the cul-de-sac to like invite neighbors to come and, hey, we need to tour your house and do an assessment before we start construction. So if there is any damage, then we know what that damage is.
Right.
Now, that was months ago, and then work began. You would think that they would have somebody on staff ready out there walking the dunes, being like, wow, it's really vibrating over here. I should probably go knock on these doors and make sure that these residents know everything's okay, that this is normal when you're pounding caissons into the ground,
Right.
and this is how long the duration of this inconvenience is going to last when the work's being done, so on and so forth. But they didn't do that. You know, and I think, again, we got news of somebody's light fixture falling,
Yes.
right, off their ceiling,
Right.
which is exciting. You know, so staff went out today, correct, to experience it firsthand, and I appreciate you for getting on that right away, Daryl.
Yep.
When I asked to send somebody out, because it's one thing to hear from a resident, it's another thing to have, you know, a member of our staff go out, see it, feel it, hear it, smell it, so that it's not just hearsay. You know, many times we get accused of doing nothing to help our residents, and so I really appreciate that today. And
Thank you. Yep.
but to Mayor Boyles' point, the sooner the work is done, the better we will all be, and the air monitoring stations will be up and live, and because that was one of the delays for, I think it was like Station 2 and Station 3 of the air monitoring. So if we can expedite that building permit, and
Yeah, no, absolutely.
yeah.
It may be just them coming to the counter and pulling it. So they've got to do that. So we'll follow up.
Let's make sure that surveyor isn't on our designated list of contractors.
Okay.
If I could throw one thing, I know Mr. Gurney commented that pilot programs tend to be permanent, and that may be true at some levels of government, but I think our experience appears that we have been more than willing to take pilot programs that are unsuccessful and pull them. I mean, most notably parking on El Segundo Boulevard. We are currently evaluating the home share pilot program, and we churn through pilot programs for better or worse, and I don't think we are bashful at all about admitting defeat and leaving the field of battle, so.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, City Manager and City Attorney. Procedural motions, read all ordinances.
Actually, Mayor, I have one more item, if you don't mind. I'm sorry that last one took a little while. But
Yeah, please.
I wanted another item there's been a number of emails and phone calls and so forth. It has to do with the Richmond Street outdoor dining. And because a number of flyers, I understand, have been handed out to the business community and residents, flyers and emails and other notices about issues that.
Can I interrupt just briefly? So long as this is a one-way communication and council's not going to be commenting on it, this is fine, but otherwise, because we have a couple council members with conflicts, so if it's a one-way without direction, that's fine.
I'd rather just step out because I do have a property in the downtown specific
All right,
district.
so that'll leave council members, that'll leave.
Sergeant at Arms, secure the portals.
I'm sorry.
It'll leave the Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Giroux, and Councilmember Perstick virtually on this item.
Yeah, I just bring this up, Council, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, because one of the flyers that I received says that the city should have been collecting $20,000 a month in rent for an outdoor dining patio. So that being said, we prepared a factual, accurate notice of information that we posted on our website, our social media platforms, and we sent out our own emails, basically clarifying what's going on over there at Richmond outdoor dining patio. And just briefly, if you recall, back in May, the city manager at that time, acting as the Emergency Services Director, issued an administrative order which allowed outdoor dining in the public right-of-way in compliance with a city-issued permit and the LA County Health Officer's order. The administrative order authorized restaurants to apply for a temporary encroachment order to conduct outdoor dining service within the public right-of-way. 3 restaurants jointly applied for outdoor dining, which was allowed as an emergency provision during this pandemic. All restaurants in El Segundo could have applied for the permit to conduct outdoor dining. No rent was required from the restaurants, and associated permit fees were waived to support the businesses during the pandemic. This past year in January, another administrative order was revised to allow outdoor dining in the public right-of-way to continue through July 1. An additional administrative order was issued in July 16th to revise the outdoor dining areas would be allowed until emergency was terminated by the City Council. And then finally, on May 3rd, the council approved an extension of outdoor dining on Richmond Street through the end of 2022. As you know, thus, Richmond Street will be reopened to vehicular traffic on January 1, 2023. So that's the accurate picture of what's going on out there. No rent is required. Fees were waived. Every restaurant had an opportunity to apply for the permit. And then also, just so you know, that on May 3rd, when the council approved the extension, there were abstentions on the dais, as you see tonight, due to the conflict of interest. So I just wanted to make that accurate statement and let you know that we have reported that on our website and other social media outlets. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any council comments? Councilmember Pierstick?
No comments.
Just one quick one. The notice that the emergency orders will probably be lifted by February 2023, according to Sacramento. Does that affect what we can and cannot do at that time frame, or is that just going to take a long time to unwind?
If the governor, from the time the governor rescinds that order, it's actually going to work out about the same. There's a year-long period where ABC is going to allow outdoor dining with relaxed regulations about allowing restaurants under more relaxed circumstances to allow alcohol to be served outside their restaurant. So if the governor does in early next year declare that the pandemic's over, emergency orders are rescinded, 12 months from then that ABC regulations will return to what they were. And that will happen no later than the middle of 2024 in any event. So there is still time, but as we work on this issue, one of the concerns we have as staff is, while middle of 2024 sounds a ways out, if you're a business and we try to come up with a program based upon ABC regulations that aren't going to be in place for that long, and, depending on the amount of investment that business is going to make in that outdoor dining, we want to make sure we're all really clear on what these rules are. Now, it may be that Sacramento will make some permanent changes to ABC regulations. We'll see, but this is why this is a complicated topic as far as the future in outdoor dining and what can be done. But we are working the issues very diligently.
Thank you. Anything further, City Manager?
No, Mayor Pro Tem, that's it.
Send the Sergeant at Arms to go retrieve them, Madam Clerk. We've already gone through the procedural motions, so I think we go right to consent when they come back. Fantastic. Start pulling items in advance.
Are you pulling all of them
I'm just
again?
going to pull them all, 7.
It was live on video, wasn't it? The clerk's office did it.
Mr. Mayor, we are on to item B, consent agenda.
Okay, and just to clarify, I thought we were making a motion to just read that one by resolution by title only, but if everyone thought we did it all, we did it all. Great. Okay, consent. Any pulls for consent? Nope. Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Great. All right. Voice vote, please. Oh, yeah, that was Lance and Chris.
Councilmember Drew,
Yes.
Councilmember Nicole,
Yes.
Councilmember Perspec,
Number 11.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyle.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Great. Yeah. Oh, Carol, happy birthday. Thank you for doing this on your birthday. Was it yesterday?
Today.
Oh, for her, right. Different time zone.
Yesterday for me, but
Good
yesterday
point.
for you.
Good point. All right, we're on to item 11. A resolution amending a regulatory fee to recover city costs for excessive false alarm responses. False alarm, excuse me. Mr. George or Mr. Hensley?
Well, briefly, as part of the earlier consent calendar, you adopted the ordinance, which is providing for the fire department and the city to be able to charge residents for false alarms as far as fire false alarms. And so that now that is in place, or will be in 30 days after you just adopted it, this is a public hearing on a fee that would be charged to those that have false alarms. So after the third, for third and subsequent false alarms, there'll be a charge of $260 for each false alarm, and this is based upon the cost of the fire employees, firefighters that are necessary, that are sent out to respond to the false alarm, and it's based upon about a half an hour of their collective time of the people that are sent out. So that is...
Before we get into details, because I see Mayor Pro Tem coming off mic, I just want to say that we're in a public hearing now. So City Clerk, was proper notice of the hearing given in a timely manner?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. I had one quick clarifying question before we go to Mayor Pro Tem about the item itself. I didn't read in there, maybe I missed it in the language. Is it in a 12-month period?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
I was only going to ask if it's discretionary. If
it's like anything else, if you go out and there's some really unusual circumstance, or, then yes, it is, law enforcement is discretionary, particularly on these kind of things.
I know this happens with new buildings in particular. We've already had probably half a dozen experiences with false alarms in our new building with police. Apologize for that. As we work out the alarm kinks and people coming on our property that shouldn't be there, et cetera.
I mean, this is sort of a code enforcement or law enforcement issue when you're talking about these things, and the way this city has always approached these types of things, I mean, I think, 99% of the time is not to go out with a hammer, but, you know, if you have that person that's got the new building and whatnot, and they're having problems, not to give them a hard time. But now, if it's 6, 9 months later and they're not doing anything to correct the problem, then that becomes a different story. So it's, yes, my sense is from working with, you know, and working on these issues myself is that, again, we don't go after people with a hammer. We're just trying to get people to comply, and, you know, false alarms do take resources.
Okay, and is there any public input for this hearing? Okay, do I have a motion to close? Thank you. Do I have a motion to close public input?
Nicole, so moved.
Thank you.
Giroux, second.
And Madam Clerk, if you would please take a voice vote.
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nicole.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
And Mayor Boyle.
Yes.
Closed.
Thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Just reiterating, I know there's a lot of consolidation in that industry, so there's a lot of one company bought another, and alarm systems as they automate disagreeing and going off for random times as a result of that. So I'm just eager that I'm glad to hear that we have some level of discretion in how companies adjust to those.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further discussion? Okay, City Attorney, would you please read the resolution by title only?
Yes, I'm sorry, one moment. I just, a resolution amending a regulatory fee to cover city costs incurred for certain regulatory El Segundo Fire Department responses is ready for adoption.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a motion to approve?
Giroux, so moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Nicole, second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please.
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nicole.
Yes.
Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
Mayor Boyle.
Yes.
All right, 5-0.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item, I think we're on to the Plunge, Urho Saari Swim Stadium, staff presentation. Mr. George.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Before I turn it over to our Public Works Director, who will lead the presentation, we are pleased tonight to present to you really what are modifications to the conceptual design that was before you back in June of 2021. So for the past several months, this conceptual design has been reviewed, and there are a number of modifications that we'll be proposing tonight for your consideration. And I know Elias is with the design team tonight, and will start the presentation.
Sure. So one more thing I would like to add is staff met with the Aquatic Subcommittee of Rec and Park Commission on September the 28th, and we went over these items, these modifications, and they were all okay with that. And one more thing I would like to add is we went back and we looked at the operation and maintenance cost of the Plunge, and we double checked the numbers. It's about $400,000 to $450,000, but on the staff report it shows $200,000. So I hereby would like to make the corrections. So without further ado, I'm gonna invite the IBI group here, Tom Moore and his staff, and we're gonna go through the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Tom Moore. I'm Associate Director and Senior Principal with Arcadis IBI Group Architects. And I'll allow my other two team members to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Janvi Kanani, the project manager with IBI Group as well.
Evening, I am Michael Wall, project architect.
Again, we're happy to be here tonight to talk about this cool project and any changes that have occurred from the initial concept design and presently, and reasons and so forth, and some aspects about cost. Oh, where? Oh, here we go. Okay, so won't necessarily read all the bullets as we go through, but just let them sit there for it. But the primary aspects are affecting the changes to date are what you see up here, historic integrity, code compliance, and which involves also the fourth bullet, fire and life safety, and changes to the program. And I'll let Michael walk you through the specific aspects of the overall project.
So on the screen now, we have the previous proposed conceptual plan as well as our current modified proposed plan and highlighted areas of the major changes to the main level. In the lobby area, we have changes regarding the historical context of the building, historical integrity of the building. Moving back, the locker rooms have slight programmatic changes. And then further in the rear, we needed to add space for an IT room to support the pool, as well as general changes to the whole building for fire life safety. Moving in, for the lobby space, previously it was proposed that there would be a mural removing the middle door and using that space provided by the mural as a reception area. Unfortunately, if we want to keep the historic integrity of the building intact, we cannot modify the front facade of the building. And so our plan keeps it in place and instead shifts the lobby reception space further into the building. Additionally, as you can see, there's 2 new wheelchair lifts proposed. In order to have access to the upper level bleachers and future proposed terrace, we need to provide a wheelchair lift to allow those who aren't able-bodied access to this upper level. Moving further back into the locker rooms, there are a couple of programmatic issues with the previous design that we are providing responses for, including more accessible changing rooms and showers, bleachers, and additionally, we reorganized the space in order to create a more light-filled environment to allow for natural light to enter deeper into the space. In the bottom right corner, there's a small purple area. This is to indicate that we are proposing an additional opening in the wall to allow for further fire emergency egress from the space. Currently, the only way to safely exit the building is through the 3 front doors, and as the fire marshal has pointed out, this is not safe, and so requiring an additional exit location. Here, we can see the difference in the conceptual facade and then our proposed facade. It's the removal of the mural, and it still maintains the initial characteristics of how it originally was designed. Into the lobby space, our reception area is shifted towards a more central location. It is now a jewel, which faces both the front entry and it allows for visibility into the pool space. And now this is a more close-up view of the locker rooms, showing highlighted things that were not previously designed for and what we are adding to the space, including, as previously stated, benches, accessible changing rooms, and accessible showers. This is the men's locker room, which is a similar mirror of the females. However, they have urinals instead of additional toilet spaces. And then we have renders of the proposed areas. As you can see in our design, it's further back from the wall, allowing a more open space for people to congregate as they enter the lockers. Now moving on to the second floor, the main changes are with regards to the upper level offices, as well as the terrace and bleacher spaces. The offices, because they have to take account for the new wheelchair lifts, have been slightly reorganized to allow a path outwards for pedestrian use, and then the office takes the rest of the space provided. From the initial design, we have swapped the location of the bleachers and the level terrace because of request of the users. During the evening games, the sunlight would go in through the windows and blind those who were sitting in the bleachers. Now with the swapped locations, that should not be an issue. As well, on the upper bleacher area, we have designated new locations for accessible seating where previously there was none. On the lower area where the terrace is located, we have provided a meeting room space which would allow users to have a more private area, or for the office users to take. Here are a couple renders showing the bleachers area as well as our proposed meeting room. Next, I will turn it over to John B. to discuss changes in cost.
Thank you. Oops. Sorry. Thank you. So primarily, we've gone through a conceptual cost estimate with the changes, and we'll go through some of the bigger cost changes. We've listed most of the changes here. I guess we've listed the entire cost estimate in a way for you to look at, but we've had to add fire sprinklers, fire alarm, which is not considered in the original proposal, and I guess even more so. So let me go to the next slide. Sorry. So the elevators that we needed to add to provide accessibility to the bleachers. So all in all, with the design contingency, we are looking at 11.5, which is higher, and part of it is also the current market situation that we are all in, and where the cost is for materials and the labor at this point. So that brings the total to 11.57 currently as proposed for when it goes to bid next year. So it considers midpoint escalation in it, as well as a design contingency, which as we progress the design, we will reduce the design contingency as we refine the design. During concept, we want to have a contingency in the conceptual budget. So as you can see, this list is the primary changes for the cost increase, which is updated material costs, labor costs. One additional item that wasn't considered previously is the hazardous abatement of the hazardous material, which this building contains. We did a environmental survey for it, an assessment, and we have a report that states that we would have to take measures to abate some of the materials when we repair and make some changes to this building. And most of the other changes were code compliance, as Michael had kind of reviewed with you. The other major cost includes the demolition, which was not which wasn't accounted for. So as we tear out the bleachers and make a flat terrace, those are changes that will be addressed in this new design. The additional cost of a meeting room, fire alarm system, hazardous abatement, and construction testing and inspection. So this accounts for the changes that we've had and the cost change we have. This is a broad look at the schedule. We've been working with Elias and the team and the aquatics team, and so we've been looking at, our goal is to get into building department by the end of the year before the code cycle changes, and we would be final approved by the April, so we should be ready for bidding at that time. With that, I will open it to questions.
One question, the demolition, is it because the design changed, that the $2 million?
No, so the original concept also had a terrace, and it just did not account for the whole, with the abatement cost, demolition cost, all of those things was not line itemed correctly, and it was a smaller number, and we've had our cost estimator look at it more closely to give us a realistic number. So.
Thank you.
This is Carol Persick. I have a question. So one of the things that I you know, I had a previous conversation with, the city manager and Elias, is the IT room. I'm not really sure if an IT room is needed. You know, I don't understand why we need a separate room for IT when there's very little IT requirements at the facility. And I think that we could accommodate that with a closet within the office space. And then the second thing is, I believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but is there not already a door that exit onto the west side of the facility? And if that's the case, why do we need a separate fire door on the east side if there's already one on the west side? And then my other question is, if it's going to cost $2 million to have demolition, do we need the terrace? Like if you know, if this cost, like, cause what is, if the cost is escalating so high, maybe we need to reevaluate the concept of having the terrace.
Do you want to answer or you want me to answer?
We're happy to look at the IT room as a separate room. That's, I don't know that we sized the IDF yet in our racks, but certainly can look at that. That's probably one of the most flexible things.
I'm not really sure what technology you need other than electronic technology for the staff to check people in, and maybe a speaker system. And maybe, you know, some technology to run heaters and stuff like that, but that could be kept in the boiler area. So I'm not sure why we would need a whole room for technology.
Well, typically we, if we do have an IDF, even if it's a small one, we want it in a temperature controlled space. But again, we're very willing to study that further, and we can report back on that. It's a very small aspect of the project. You know a little bit more of the history, John, beyond the terrace.
Yeah, so for the terrace, I think that was part of the concept design that was presented early on, because we wanted an event space, and my understanding from Aquatics, and Elias can probably elaborate more, is that the hope is that this space would be rented out to community for event space, birthday parties, and give a place, and also generate some kind of a revenue to the aquatic center. So there is value, there's a ROI back to investing into that, adding that feature to this project. So.
This demolition figure is not just the terrace. It includes all the demolition, the lockers room, the walls, and everything else. And it was flat out not included in the previous conceptual plan altogether. And they were not including that in their design either. So it's just not just the terrace. It's overall demolition and remediation.
Okay. So, Elias, what's the difference in the price tag versus the previous price tag to the current price tag, the proposed price tag?
Not a whole lot. The cost of demolition there was not much of it.
No, not demolition. The whole project. How much money? How much more has it gone?
Yeah, the whole project. It's the difference is 9.5 million as opposed to 11.6 million. So the basic items. Number one was demolition, which was not included in that 9.5 million estimate to begin with. In other words, it was just a mistake. It was not included. It's not that we are adding to it. It was there. It was never included in the figure. The other items.
Elias, make no mistake. It was a mistake. It's a $2.5 million mistake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
so let's call it what it is at least. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a mistake. The other items that were added as a result of the codes and the new look at this from their point of view, number one, because of ADA, we had to add 2 lifts, one on either side. So that's about $95,000 right there. And the other change was adding the fire alarm per hour fire marshal. We needed to add the fire alarm. It was not included in the previous estimate, although the sprinkler system was, but the fire alarm was not.
Councilmember Persick had a question about the west exit, there's egress apparently
Yes.
going out to the field, I think she's referring
So,
to.
As you can see, right?
Yeah.
Closer, please. Sure. Oh, sorry. As you can see, right now, the exit on the main deck level is all through the main lobby, which is the 3 doors like Michael mentioned. The upper door egress is on the higher level. So when we look at code looks at the number of people that are on the first floor, and if they get trapped, how do they go up on the, because if you look at the plan from the fire marshal's point of view, that if there is a fire in the lobby, all the access going up to the second story is from the lobby. So if somebody's behind at the deck area, they will be trapped unless they run through the boiler room, which is not a permitted exit. So in order to preserve the integrity of the building, all we are proposing is to put an opening, right, which is kind of already an exited door, so it does not. And that cost is very insignificant compared to the life safety you would provide to the residents.
One thing I like to point out, as these types of projects, normally, typically, there is one step which is called value engineering. And that takes place right before the final plans are signed off on. And we've got another agreement with Westberg White, and we'll be looking at this project very thoroughly, and we will be looking at pretty much all the items to make sure that we gain all the efficiencies that there are to be gained. And this is a typical process, not just for the Plunge, for any major remodeling, any major construction facility. You do that, and that's really what architects do, and they're very good at, and we intend to do that also.
And to add, just to Elias, we've reviewed this with the building department, and at one point we looked at to see if we could do only 50% accessibility, but looking at the code and looking at what is governed, it was recommended, and that's why we are at 2 lifts right now. So, we've reviewed it with the fire marshal, we've reviewed it with the building department to ensure that we've addressed all code issues moving forward, so.
And I'd just like to add, we're enjoying working very closely with city staff and your team. And as a basis, and not having to do with any escalation or anything for this project, and I think something to be excited about, the whole project and reopening it to the community is along also operationally and with your maintenance staff and just talking with folks and understanding the previous operation of this facility. We're going to solve aspects about over-humidification of the interior space. We're going to have a safer pool equipment room. There's just going to be a lot of fundamental base aspects to this project that's going to allow you to use it really successfully for the next 30 to 50 years.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Councilman Drew.
I have made my feelings on this project known, so this is not going to be much of a surprise. I do want to state right now, though, I am not against rehabilitating the Plunge. I am very much against this project the way it's written. The fundamental problem we have here is that we just designed without a budget rather than designing to a budget. I think that's something we may want to look at some point in time. But here's some fundamental questions I have. You've already gone from $9.2 million to $11.7 million in less than a year. What's that going to look like in 2025? Joe, around here somewhere, based on what's going to, the increase in costs over the next couple of years? I'm guessing another couple $1 million, probably about $13 million total by the time we're done, 2025. And, time out, and that doesn't include the design costs. That's just the cost of building this thing. So, is that a 15% contingency, or is that the soft cost that you're talking about?
I think it's the initial 800,000 is encumbered for
design.
So
The design is
piece
already encumbered.
Is already part of it.
And that could shrink.
More than likely not, but okay. I would love to think that'd be the case, but in my short time in government, I have learned that every cost is double what it should be.
It's slide 15 of your presentation.
Okay.
Just so it's up, so you can see
That's
it while
cool.
you're talking about
We'll
it.
go with that. So that's one thing. Let's forget for a moment that we don't even have the money to build it, okay? Let's say that we do. Where's my public works, park and rec director? We currently have a pool on the other side of PCH that is so understaffed that I believe we have missed out on, 45 different shifts have not been covered in the past, I don't know over what period of time, but we're having a monster of a time just trying to staff that pool. Is that accurate?
We're having some difficulties right now with staffing.
So now we're going to double that by having another pool that costs the same amount as that one does. So we're going to have to double the staff, come up with an entire aquatics department. If we're going to own 2 pools or manage 2 pools, we have to have someone we have to have people on staff who are experts on pools. We don't have that right now. So on your O&M, where you say it's $450,000, I don't think so. I think it's going to be about double that at the minimum, because we're going to have to hire into this. So the big problem isn't necessarily building it, it's trying to operate and manage it for this is like having a child, okay? It's going to cost a lot of money, and as it gets older, it's going to cost even more. So I have a fundamental problem with the fact that I don't think we have a plan in place to actually manage this once we actually build it. Okay, there's a couple other things. You mentioned, I saw the upper level offices. I was a little confused on that one. And you mentioned something about the light coming in because of evening games. There aren't going to be any games played at that pool. Do you know why? Because we're not changing the depth of the pool. You cannot run any events there. There's no competition events that can run there. No high school, none of that stuff. You're not changing the depth. It's like, 4 feet deep on one side. You can't play water polo. High school team's not playing there. That is actually not a competition pool. That's a lap pool for open swim for our residents. So we're talking potentially $13 million lap pool for our residents. I want to provide things for our residents too. I just don't think I want to provide it at that price tag, nor do I believe, we're planning on going in paying the same amount of money to swim in the new plunge as you did the old plunge. What's the cost recovery going to be? Maybe 20% if we're lucky? So all I'm saying is, can we take a little bit more of a holistic approach to this and say, we want to have a pool there. I'm in agreement. I'm not arguing with anybody on that. I got you. But we have to make it, if this is going to be a rehabilitation of the plunge and not this gigantic new plunge, I can get behind that. But right now, this is going to be the gift that keeps on giving. It might be the biggest cash drain on this city that there's ever been, based on what I see right now and based on what our history is with ESAC right now.
Yeah. One comment, if you don't mind. Anytime you touch any structure more than a certain percentage, you have no choice, but you have to comply with the ADA. And a lot of this is...
I'm not arguing this with I'm not arguing ADA with you. I get we have to do all that. I get even on a more, let's say, modest build, we're going to have to do all those things. I'm not arguing that point at all. I'm saying that in order for us to do this properly, we have to have a plan to actually run it. One of the biggest problems we have at ESAC right now is we built this thing, didn't really understand what it was going to take to run it, and now we're scrambling. Are we going to have, and also an indoor pool, Allie, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if anybody's told you, from my understanding is an indoor facility costs a lot more to maintain than an outdoor facility.
So are you, I guess you're suggesting that you want some numbers, the cost, the maintenance, the staffing, how much would be the charge for people to get in, and that kind of plan is what you're talking about.
Well, again, it's not up to me in particular. I would need the majority, but I would think that we would want to have an actual business plan put together for actually how we're going to run this. That's all I'm saying. And look, I understand we're going to subsidize. Don't get me wrong. I'm not looking for 100% cost recovery. I'm just saying right now,
I understand.
We can't even staff enough lifeguards at the other pool. And that's with what, $16 plus an hour, you know, for high school kids. So, I mean, it's not that it's going to cost more at that point in time. So I think that we need to relook at this thing and make it a more affordable piece, personally, but I only get one vote, so that would be my thing. But I also believe that an actual business plan, for lack of a better term, has to be figured into the decision. That's all I got.
When we first got the first iteration that had, I forget what the design looked like, but I posed a question about going outdoors. Knowing that the number is now 11.5, we think, does it still not make sense to just demo the building and have an outdoor pool? I mean, do we know what that would cost? I mean, I know that the seniors like shade cover, but what are we talking about in terms of
So
delta and
currently, we're
capital?
building a pool, a brand new facility I'm just giving you numbers from a brand new facility that's opening next week in the County of LA, by County of LA project, which is Whittier Aquatic Center, and the numbers running right now with a brand new building, a new, new pool. They do have other additional features, which is a cost of $23+ million. So
Yeah, no, but if you were gonna take and just build, if you could just isolate the components of that project, how much is just, if we look at our project and we said, I mean, is it even feasible to redo the pump filters and all that, the infrastructure to keep the pool heated and cleaned, demo the buildings and operate an outdoor pool or not?
Well, even with the outdoor pool, you would still need lockers and you would still need some amount of, operational facility, right? Because you need staff and all
Maybe,
that.
but I'm thinking of when I look at ESAC, it's pretty nominal. And there's probably ways to do that in a modular fashion too. I mean,
Yeah,
prefab.
the cost I gave you is a more elaborate project, so.
I'm just curious, I threw it out there last time, it just seems like we're spending a lot of money to retrofit this incredible building that was built many, many years ago. But to Councilmember Drew's point, is that the most, least capital intensive way forward, I guess?
If that's the wish of the city council, we certainly could go back and put some numbers together and to the best of our ability, estimate what would be the demolition cost and an outdoor swimming pool, and we could do that. And one thing is, as you well know, if we demolish this building, then there's this, this is a structure that has historical value to it. And whether, I don't believe we are on registry on a national level, maybe not even at the state level, but we may have an issue regarding demolition of a building, because I think the city has categorized this as a historic structure, I think.
I mean, I'm just thinking too, from an O&M standpoint, the operating expenses to main an exterior facility only versus enclosed in terms of heating a big building.
Yes.
Janitorial services in a big building, window cleaning in a big building. All these things add up to.
So the operation and maintenance with respect to the heating of an indoor swimming pool is less than outdoor, because you control the temperature more.
I wasn't referring to the pool.
Yeah.
I mean, just even heating the building itself in the winter.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
And that is also, we could come up with those numbers if that's what the wish of the city council is.
I mean, for me, I don't know how my colleagues feel. It's such a big number, knowing we've got so many other priorities ahead of us in terms of capital infrastructure. To me, it's a go, no-go feasibility study. Does it make any sense to consider tearing it down, or to Councilmember Drew's value engineering earlier on? Is there some parts of this project that we can take out? I mean, 30 years, 11.5, without any cash flow analysis of net present value, that's $380,000 a year over 30 years to pay for that asset without operating and maintenance expenses. So it is a huge nut for this city, and I don't think it should be taken lightly. I also know that I was in favor of, when Acacia came back up and the original proposal was to keep the pool, I said, no, I don't think we should keep the pool, because at that point, I think I had 200 visitors on average in a summer. It didn't seem like the utilization was there. So, but we did lose a swimming pool that served a part of the community on the west side. So I would love, personally, I would love for us to find a way to have a pool in town. When I say in town, I mean, you know, this side of PCH, in the neighborhood. I just think the way in which, I agree that it's a huge spend going forward. And I would also like to understand what that pro forma looks like in terms of ongoing, any revenue and expenses on a go-forward basis, just to have a general sense of, even if it's ballpark.
40% of the costs projected here are in demolition. So between demo and hazmat removal, how confident are we in that $2.5 million hazmat removal number? Is that a rough estimate based on approximate tonnage, or do we know what's in there and where we have to send it?
I don't have those facts and figures right off the top of my head, but our consultant gave it a very detailed look, and we have those documents we can
Because that is
make
a big,
available to the
that is a big chunk
council.
of this, right? I mean, that is on the nose. 40% of this is just in demo and disposal. So I think what you're hearing up here is a little bit more granularity on that, and certainly the O&M portion weighs heavily on us on what the plan is. I don't foresee the city turning its back on a pool at that facility. Obviously, there'll be some chicken fighting over that, but you know, we have a certain amount of money already allocated and raised and committed for that. We have a capital expense plan detailed to the construction of it that gets us most of the way to this number, but what it doesn't cover is the operation. So that's obviously not you guys, that's us guys, of figuring out what that looks like and what that 450 is projected on. You may have already run the numbers, I don't know, but I think we would need to know that. And then if 40% of these costs is just demolition, and you know, that could come in at, that $2.5 million could turn into 3.5, or it could turn into 1.5, depending on what that removal looks like. So I think we'd probably benefit from a little more specificity on that. That would be my preference, as opposed to you know, wholesale redesign, just because I'm eager to not see this thing pushed back into 2038. But
I got a lot. But I want to start here because I'm just trying to understand the math, right? So design contingency, escalation midpoint, contractor contingency, general contractor condition requirements, all these percentages. That's the net building cost is 7.4. All those other costs account for 44% increase of that 7.4 million. And, you know, just when I look at like general contractor overhead and profit at 8%, it's like, cool, 8%. But that 8% is not of the 7.4. That 8% is of the 10.1 once those other percentage contingencies are there. But the design contingency, that's in case we need additional designs? Is that like, these are all buffers, right?
Yeah, everything up to the escalation is design, and then contractor contingency, and the rest is just, until you get to testing and inspection, is the contractor's normal, you know, overhead profit, bonds, insurance, profit. But the design contingency, typically, we carry it at 15% at schematic design phase. I know it could go both ways. I strongly feel that we've looked at everything. We could do some value engineering on the project, and we could bring this cost down a bit. I mean, if you just looked at the terrace alone, and you thought that was like part of the deal breaker, to look at that, we could keep bleachers both sides. But again, that might be offset with your analysis to be a revenue producing component of the facility.
I think from a standpoint, I mean, we campaigned 4.5 years ago with the aquatic center, and you know, and there were people that were like, you know, Councilmember Giroux's got this idea on how to monetize the pool, and I was like, pool's never gonna make a dime. I was like, it's not, it's gonna cost us money, everything costs us money, it's gonna cost us money. And what it came down to ultimately was it's a city asset. And so if it was a privately owned asset, it could be monetized. But city assets don't usually
I
get
didn't realize at the
monetized.
time that we didn't have a business plan for that pool when we
Yes.
built it. That's my
Yes.
point.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I think us as the stewards of, public funds, I think the value engineering is something that has to be done. Because when I look at this, I just think to myself, like, okay, anyone sitting at home is like, what are you guys doing? Are you just giving our money away? Because there are other infrastructure projects that are in desperate need of funds. All that said, I'm totally happy with that. I think it would be a shame, an absolute shame, for us to demolish the Plunge. I think my grandfather worked during the Depression on, FDR projects, right? And I think about all the stories he told me and all the wonderful, this is the West Coast. We have no history. We have nothing. You go back east and it's history everywhere. And you come out west and it's like, no, look at Irvine. Everything's new. It's just, this is like the Old Town Music Hall. It's like this historical piece of El Segundo. Is it in the right location currently if we were planning this city? No, it's not, right? But the historical value that I believe it provides and the character of, walking down a residential street to your local pool is something to be said. And, you can say, no, we don't need another pool. We don't technically own a pool. Do we? Aquatic Center, do we own that? Is that our pool?
Hilltop.
No, we got Hilltop, right? But so we don't technically own a pool, right? And we experienced earlier this year the perils of not owning the asset and what it means to have a partner and to have a joint use agreement with someone who is our partner on an asset that really they're just waiting for us to walk away from. But all that said, I feel like we sat up here, and I shouldn't say we, 'cause not all of us said it, but I know I said it. I made a promise that, Plunge is going to be here till the day I die. And I'm going to do everything within my power to try to make sure that the Plunge stays here till the day I die. And so either we just got to start getting used to these giant numbers that make us, take pause and gulp, or we value engineer, right? Or we find ways to be more prudent with our funds so that we can afford these assets. Because I'm telling you right now, we hear from club water polo and club swimming teams that fight over pool allocation. So it's not like there's not a demand for water, okay? We have residents who have to enter a lottery for their kids to learn how to swim, right? So what we're saying to a resident is like, hey, we're gonna spend a bunch of your money over there at the aquatic center, but you might not get your kid taught how to swim at our pool because you didn't win the lottery, And when every time I go to the aquatic center, I think to myself, like, that is a professional quality facility. That is not our local pool. That is not jazzercise. That is not swim lesson pool. That should be rented out every single day, every moment of the day to club teams, professional teams that are traveling, teams that are coming to, when the Olympics come to town. I hope to God that there are countries that are practicing in that pool, getting ready for their Olympic meets. Now, does that mean that we're going to have, South Bay Water Polo up here, the mic complaining that their water polo time is getting cut into? I guarantee it is. I won't have to listen to it, but some of you might have to. But so I think of all that, and it's just like, look, we took away the pool at Acacia because it didn't make sense. Right? And it didn't make sense for a long, long time, and I stand by that decision. But the Plunge is something that we need to find a way to make happen. The Plunge, sorry, I'm rambling, but we talk all the time. For last 4 years, we've spent a lot of time talking about the cost of the pool, right? How to try to monetize the asset. What the cost recovery is, cost recovery. And I'm the first one that says, well, what's cost recovery on the baseball field? What's cost recovery on the tennis courts? What's cost recovery on the hockey rink? What are the cost recovery on all these other facilities? What's the cost recovery on all the parking we provide in town that we don't charge for, right? You can go on and on and on and on and on about cost recovery. And at the end of the day, I think it is prudent upon our city to hold on to a piece of its history, to restore this back to its luster, and to have a pool that is actually truly the possession of our residents, not the aquatic center that's not ours, that we manage and pay too much money for, and really it's for club sports, right? It's not recreational, and it's not driven towards our residents, you know? And so my position is, I hate the price tag, but I want to do whatever I can to push this thing forward. That's where I stand on it.
So what if we looked at this? Because like I agree, I was, high school had a water polo game today. I was with Henry and Joanne Stewart, so he was very adamant to me that you need an indoor facility because he gets cold, and I get it. All right, and that's who we're trying to service, so I understand that. So can we take a look at this and say, it's going to be an indoor facility, all right? Obviously, was built a long time ago. It's got good bones, and let's figure out what we can do with it. But we have to figure out what the price tag needs to be, not allow a design team to tell me what the price tag should be. If we want to sit there and say, you know what, right now we have $5 million already budgeted for that. We figure with what we've already budgeted going forward, we have about, it says about 10.7 here. We'll see. If we can build this thing for $9 million and say that we have an extra 1.5 to pay for O&M for the first 2 years that it's in business, is that something we can pull off? Like, what would that facility look like if I told you you had to build it for $8.5 million, not $12 million? What would it look like? You're still gonna have the pool. You just might not have all the bells, whistles, kickstand, and a basket on it, but you're gonna have the pool, and really all these residents care about, go in, be able to swim, go home. To the beautification process and bleachers and all these things and a coffee bar and all that other stuff, it's great to have, but you know what? We got a lot of places in town they can grab stuff and bring it in there. If we want to get this thing open and have it run, let's do it at a value that we can live with. That's all. I want to land the plane too. I don't want to have it keep coming up here. I just cannot say yes to that with no business plan. I can't do it.
I got a question for the city manager, and maybe Joe Lilio if he's here. I didn't see him. He did, because there's nothing on the agenda applied to him except everything. Oh, okay. So, you know, we have a financial policy surrounding funds that we will receive from Topgolf, right? We created a subcommittee, we presented it to the council, and it was adopted at a 5-0 vote. One of those pieces in there, and I remember at the time City Manager Mitnick, he didn't really like that we were tying the city's hands on where that money was going, because he really wanted it to just go to the general fund so that he can decide, you know, collectively where it was going to go. And we felt as a council that, hey, it's important that we point that money in a direction, because here it is, you know, we brought on new revenue and we needed to take care of the things that we promised it would take care of. One of those pieces, though, is that food and beverage piece, right? That 3%. Do we have any early indication as to what that 3% actually is in dollars? Because I've been there a couple times, and I know what my check was.
So it is paid on an annual basis. That means
Okay.
we won't receive that money until probably next May.
Got it, but we don't get any reports or anything.
No, we have not received it yet, but I have a meeting coming up with their CFO, who I believe resides in Texas in their headquarters, and I'm going to be asking for quarterly reports.
It'd be nice to know, because to Councilmember Giroux's point, you know, if it's like, whoa, okay, well, hey, there's money, here's this sum of money that's coming in, right? We can start trying to earmark, or we can forecast how we're going to make up this delta, how we're going to pay for things, how we're going to continue to pay for things in the park, so on and so forth, right? Because if, you know, for all those who did not want Topgolf to come on because the golf course was part of our parks and recreation, right? If all of the fund, or, you know, if the lion's share of the funds that we get from that 50-year land lease find its way back into our parks and recreation, then it's a value add to the residents of town. You know, and I think that that's something simple that we could do. But if we could get a concept of those numbers to play into this business modeling plan, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, so we've plugged in the floor, which is $200,000 a year that we're guaranteed. So that is in the budget for this year, and the projections out.
As soon as we get some indication where that's going, then we'll update those numbers and the forecast. And per the Topgolf policy, I don't remember the exact range, but I believe it was 30 to 60% was going to be used, dedicated towards park and recreation programming. And so this year we put 1.5 million in for the plunge, and that met that threshold.
And I think, too, part of that policy was after the $5 million loan from equipment replacement was paid back, then that additional percentage gets added on to the allocation to Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, that's the first hurdle, is it has to get back, it has to repay the equipment fund first, the equipment replacement fund, and then it kicks in.
Right, and that's about a 10-year repayment plan. Now, it could happen a lot faster depending on the beverage sales.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, the city manager's birthday party at Topgolf, and we'll see if we can-
Councilor Perstock, do you have any comments on this matter?
I'm gonna, I have, my sentiments are very similar to Councilwoman Nichols, in that this is something that we promised the residents when we built the aquatic center, that we would renovate the plunge, and I think that we owe that to the residents. I know it's a big price ticket, and I would like the Elias to go back and have a look at if they can tighten the pencil a little bit. But I just, the other thing it's been closed now since before the pandemic, and I want to make sure that we're not just sitting on it for years and years and years, because as it sits there, it deteriorates, and I think we need to. The longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. So we're at a point where we need to make a decision, and my vote is to really move forward. And then if the group could come back with some tightening of the numbers, because I do think we need to move forward. It's something we have promised our residents, and we can't turn away from that. And then one of the things, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to get additional revenue from other sources after the election. So I'm hopeful that that we'll have the funds to move forward with this.
Thank you. It sounds like we have consensus. You guys are going to come back. You all will come back with further enhancements on the model, capital refinements, et cetera, right?
Yeah, just generally, I spoke with the member of the consultant team, and she felt that within the 30 days that we could go back and sharpen the pencil a bit and come back. Probably that would set us up for maybe the first meeting in December 6th, I believe. So that'll give us a target.
It might be better to do the first meeting in November, just no reason, but.
No.
Well, that would also give us some time to look at the revenue and
then also the business plan portion.
The business plan, right.
I think it's going to take at least 30 days for the county to, if that's what you're talking about,
Yes.
count votes.
Yes.
It will.
Yeah.
Are we really having a meeting 5 days before Christmas? Have to? Why do you do these things?
It's not her. Come on now. All right. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to item 13, fiscal year 2021-2022 year-end financial report. Mr. George?
Yes, we will call back our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Lilio.
I don't think you're up yet, Ally.
Is this a report that can be emailed to us while you're talking? By chance? Does somebody have this? It's not in the
clerk has
general
it.
packet. Is it one of the supplements on the website? Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's easier if you jump ahead and I want to scroll back and look at something. It's okay if you can't, but if somebody in the building has this and can email it while we're here, that'd be outstanding. All right.
We'll just
never
keep
mind.
saying go back a page.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's going to be, I'm going to have some of my staff present some of the slides as well. Okay. So this is, I do want to point out these numbers are the unaudited numbers for fiscal year in 21-22, so ending June 30, 2022. We're in the midst of our audit right now. We should have that wrapped up by the end of November, where we'll have the final numbers sometime towards the end of December. So revenues, again, so this is for a general fund. Revenues, the original adopted budget was $74.8 million. We ended the year much stronger than what we anticipated, even than what I presented to council during the mid-year budget. So we ended with a total, again, looking at the bottom here, $83.2 million. The last 3 months of the year came in very, very strong. And I'll go over some of the key items here. Our UUT numbers came in extremely strong because of higher energy prices, higher commodity prices, which is a key factor on how UUT's calculated. In our franchise tax with SoCal Edison and Southern California Gas, that also came in much higher. And again, that's tied to energy prices rising and commodity prices rising.
Joe, if we normed inflation out of that and presumed 2% instead of 8%, we're still a little bit positive, right? If we took that down to, if we normed out 5 percentage points on that, we're still coming in at $77 or $78 million.
Correct, right. Yep. So, and that's right, yeah, inflation is a key part of it. So sales tax, that $1.1 million higher, about half of that is contributed to the increase in fuel prices. So that's a good portion of it there. The BLT, Mayor, I know it's an item that you're always very concerned about. While we budgeted conservatively this year at $11,750,000, we came in pretty close. Now, if the pandemic never occurred, that would probably be closer to $12.5 million. So it is down, considering where we would have been, but I think pretty steady. Property tax came in right basically where we anticipated it, and that's about a 2% growth from the prior year. TOT, this is a big one. So we were trending the beginning of the year, so going back to July of 2021 through December, trend was not good. The occupancy rates were very low, room rates were low. And then sometime in the late winter, early spring of 2022, occupancy rates started rising, room rates started rising. I just got a report for the month of September. The average occupancy rate for El Segundo is at 85%. So we're almost back to pre-pandemic levels, which was about 90%. And room rates are right about where they were before. So it's good news for hotels.
Joe, and I don't know if we have quantitative data on this, but qualitatively, mostly tourism, not many business travelers. What are we hearing from our hotels?
From some of the larger hotels, I'm hearing it's business travel. Combination of patrons coming from maybe events that are happening at SoFi Stadium. It's helping somewhat, but a bulk of it is business traveler coming back again. Will that continue? You know, if the recession continues and businesses cut back, we'll see. I do want to point out, though, so while we ended at that $12.3 million, that is still down from the height of $15 million pre-pandemic.
We still have one of our largest employers, top 10, that's only working here 1 day a week. So that's why I'm questioning, and that also will affect the vendors that come into town, obviously. And we see it with our lunch business. Our restaurants are dying for lunch. Several of them have shut down lunch business altogether. So I'm struggling with that number on the TOT, but that is off a high of what, 15 million pre-pandemic?
15 million pre-pandemic. Okay. Now, it could be, Mayor, that it's patrons coming into our hotels that normally would have stayed on somewhere in the Century Boulevard corridor, or in LA or another city, and instead they're coming here, and maybe their business is not inside El Segundo. That could be part of it. The Chevron tax agreement. So they have a total allocation that they have to provide to the city. So sales tax, property tax, UUT, and some other taxes. That total amount has to add up to what our agreement is, and it's increased by CPI every year. And whatever they're short ends up being paid through that tax resolution agreement. So that was up slightly this year at 722, higher than what we budgeted. And that has to do with they applied for a Prop 8 reassessment of some of their properties, and that was awarded to them, which decreased their assessed value, but we got it back through our TRA. The UUT, so that's utility user tax, I did touch on that, higher energy prices, higher commodity prices. That is the highest that we've received in UUT tax since I've been here. So going on a little over 6 years. And, there's Wall Street Journal and other business articles and publishes talk about increasing energy prices will continue, especially into the winter. Natural gas prices going higher, so that will also, it's not good for the individual consumer, but it is good for city coffers. Charges for services up about $500,000, and that really just has to do with coming out of the pandemic and a lot of our programming opening back up again. Transfers in, so this was really two things. One, a $2 million transfer from our OPEB trust. That was part of our budget gap that we proposed. There was a $9 million budget gap when we first adopted the budget. Part of that was transferring $2 million from the OPEB trust to fill that $9 million budget gap. That did not happen because our revenues were higher than what we budgeted, so we didn't have to transfer it over. So we did not touch our OPEB trust. The other $2 million that came in, that was from the ARPA dollars. So we received $1,983,000, I believe, July of 21, which that's reflected there. And then we received another payment, exact same amount, July of 22, which is incorporated into our current year budget. Let's see, anything else? Franchise tax, I already touched on that. It's the higher commodity prices. Let's go down to number 13, interest and rentals. That really has to do just with the interest rates rising. And so our portfolio that Mr. Robinson, the treasurer, is managing, we are getting much better returns on our money now. So again, about $8.4 million higher than what we anticipated in the original adopted revenue. So I'm going to turn it over. I'll do one more slide here. This is our total revenues going from 2018 through 2022. One thing I do want to point out, so we were really if we go back even prior to 2018, our revenues were steadily increasing. 2019, they peaked at just a little over 80 million, and then the pandemic hit. We dropped down to 61.7 million in 21. Granted, that was a 9-month budget, abbreviated budget, so we can change our fiscal year. If it had been a full 12-month budget, that would have been about 76 to 77 million. And then 2022, here we are, 83.2 million. Remember, about 2 million of that, though, is the one-time ARPA dollars that we received from the federal government.
Do you know roughly what the inflation rate has been from 2019 to now?
If you don't include 2022, you exclude that,
Yeah.
It's been about 2.5%, if you want to just average it.
Per annum.
If you average it over that 19 through the end of 2021.
So like compounded 8 or 9% increase from, so no change whatsoever, that 80 million could theoretically be 86 in inflation adjusted dollars today?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Right. Yeah, and for 2022, end of September, I believe inflation was about 8.7%. It's been steady between 8 and 9% most of this year. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Vicki, our finance manager.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So I'm continuing on the discussion for general fund expenditure. So overall, you can see fiscal year 21-22, the expenditure was in budget. The adopted budget was 77 million, and the actual turned out to be 99.8%. So, for the detailed departments, fire's budget was 5% over, mainly due to the increase in overtime.
Can we touch on that real quick? It's just hard to fathom. I saw that number earlier. So $700,000 over on a budget. How does that happen? How are we? Is that all just these very strict rules related to staffing that are so unique to fire with their schedule, or is that? I mean, you already had those rules, I should say, built into what you budgeted, but they came in $750,000 over budget. Do we have any further detail as to why that happened?
I don't know if the fire chief would have anything to add, but so we have that 14 per shift that it's constant staffing of 14 per shift. We have 3 shifts. So if there are any unexpected absences, maybe due to an unexpected illness or an IOD an injury, and they're out on workers' comp for a while, we still have to maintain, per the model that existed in the year that we're talking about, 14 per shift. And so there were, I think, a higher than expected amount of absences than what was in the budget, and that's what caused that overtime. Because
Chief, I'm just looking for clarity on how we ran 700,000 over budget. Any anomalies, strike missions affect that, anything like that?
No, we didn't go on.
Would you mind? Yeah, thank you, just so the video can hear it.
No, it wasn't for strike team deployment. We have 4 vacancies. HR was working hard so that we could recruit for the positions. We had battalion chief, 2 captains on long-term IOD. It was basically just filling spots for long-term vacancies.
Thank you.
Joe, for clarification, the transfer outs, those are pension payments, correct?
Vicky's going to touch on it really.
Sorry.
It's transfer out to CIP and what's the other one, Vicky?
Yeah, general fund transferred out 420,000 to the solid waste fund to subsidy for residential trash service, and also a transfer of 300,000 for the park restroom project was brought to the city council on December the 7th, 2021, and that was not originally included in the adopted budget. So next one is the non-departmental over budget by 5% due to the retiree health insurance increasing because of additional retirements from the city that was not anticipated for in the budget. And you can see for HR and the city attorney, they were over budget by 27% and 34% respectively. They were mainly due to the increase of personnel claims and the lawsuits, general litigation, and the personnel investigations.
Okay, so if a member of, say, public safety sues the city, the litigation expenses and all the legal work leading up to that is paid for by HR up until the point when there's a settlement or some decision, or how are you allocating?
Well, it doesn't matter where the employee, it could be a general employee, a safety employee. If it's not related to a workers' comp claim or a general liability claim, if it's just a general investigation, then that comes out of the city attorney's budget and HR budget. So they both kind of share the cost and just any general litigation, general investigation, employment investigations.
Do we have a total number of expenses related to investigations and legal work?
I don't have that number
Be interesting to
available
know
tonight,
at a
but I
later
can get
date.
that. for
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
So for COVID-19 response, we didn't budget this type of expenditure due to the uncertainty, but this cost was tracked separately in order to claim the reimbursement. So far, last year in fiscal year 22, the city has filed 13 public assistance claims with FEMA with the intent of being reimbursed up to 100% of the qualified COVID-19 related expenditure. So we will talk about more details later with other slides. So overall, despite the departments with over budgeted expenditure, quite a few departments were under budget. So the net result for fiscal year 22 was in budget with 134,000 favorable variance. Do you have any question for? Oh, okay. So this slide is the fund balance. Compare the unaudited year-end fund balance to our mid-year estimate. We have 8 million favorable variance from revenue and almost 2 million favorable variance from expenditure savings. So total about 10 million contributed into the fund balance. The city council can provide instruction on how to allocate the fund balance during the mid-year budget review in February 2023. Economic uncertainty reserve. We replenished the economic uncertainty reserve by 824,000 to make the reserve close to 2 million level according to the city's reserve policy. Okay, so this is the 10-year financial trend. Based on our long-term financial strategic plan in place, the chart shows the trend with a relatively small gap between revenue, which is the blue line, and the expenditure, which is the red line. The chart doesn't include the impact from future revenue sources, such as business license tax. So with the consideration of the new revenue sources, the green line, which is the fund balance, will be more optimistic.
Also assumes no material shifts in our workforce in El Segundo, correct?
Correct. There's a 2% built-in inflation cost for personnel.
Thank you.
So I will turn this over to Joe.
So I'll be real quick on this. The pension obligation bonds, which council approved last year, were issued. We issued at 95% of the unfunded liability. City was rated AA+, which was great during the pandemic, saving the city about $84 million over 19 years. So fast forward a year, we did receive the actual reports this July from CalPERS. We have various plans, police, fire, miscellaneous, and then there's Pepper and Classic, so about 6 plans. 105 to 109% funded. So that's great position to be in. CalPERS investment portfolio ending June 30, 2022, ended with a negative 6.1% return. So that's not factored in yet. It takes CalPERS a whole year. So next July 2023, that negative return will be built in there. Remember, the discount rate is at 6.8. So if you take the difference of where they expected to be 6 and a negative 6.1 return, it's an actuary loss of 12.9%. So 12.9% loss.
In the past, Joe, we would take those negative amortization lines, for lack of a better term, and we would pay those down because
Correct.
they would have negative ramifications for many years to come.
Right.
Do you have a general sense of what this is going to do to us?
So general sense, it's going to be that last bullet point. With this expected actuary loss, our plans will go from that 105 to 109% funded down to 92 to 96% funded.
In 1 year.
is-
Wow, that's
in
pretty
1 year.
significant. So we could consider maybe in mid-year or whenever you think it's appropriate to allocate funds for that this poor performance year, or is that not a good tactic anymore?
We would have to wait for the July 2023 report to be
Okay.
issued, and then we can take action on
But they also give you a grace period to pay where you don't pay the interest or something, if I remember
the
correctly?
month of July.
Okay, okay.
Yep. So federal and state funding related to COVID, I'm going to have one of our newest employees who I hired, 5 years ago? 6 years ago, who's counting? Went to...
Wait, hired or took her from another department?
No, I originally
just
hired
kidding.
her. Yes. And anyway, she came back to finance. Don't know if you want to introduce
Welcome back.
Thank you. Liz Leidick. Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Thank you for the welcome. So we have the federal and state funding related to COVID slide here. And this slide provides an update on funding related to COVID-19. So though the incident management team has been demobilized and most expenses related to COVID-19 emergency have concluded, the city does continue to file and track payments for several claims, as Vicki mentioned, for up to about 13 projects with FEMA. And our intent is to be reimbursed to the fullest extent possible for the COVID-related expenditures that we've incurred since 2020. So in this slide, you see that we've been awarded $3.9 million in ARPA funds. We received half of that amount, $1.9 million, mid-July 2021, so that applies to the 21-22 revenue. The second and final payment of $1.9 million was received in mid-July 2022, so that will be reflected in the 22-23 revenue. In fiscal year 21-22, we received $11,280 of our pending FEMA reimbursements, and to date, we still have $1.68 million pending. In fiscal year 21-22, we also received approximately $60,000 in coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds from the State Water Resources Control Board, again, this last fiscal year. Other funds? So the next two slides depict the revenues and expenditures associated with our enterprise funds. So we have the water utility fund activity for fiscal year 21-22. The decrease in revenues is mainly due to a couple of factors, one being low interest rates, which result in associated investment revenue coming in slightly lower than anticipated. This is because we utilize full accrual accounting, and that requires us to record the market loss in investments, although no cash is impacted by that accounting procedure. Additionally, the reclaimed water sales revenue was lower than anticipated. However, the potable water sales exceeded budget revenue expectations. The expenses were under budget due to decreases for both contractual services and repair and maintenance services for pending capital projects. The next enterprise fund is for wastewater.
Can I ask a quick question on that? That
Sure.
reclaimed water, is that as a result of Hyperion not being able to send recyclable water to West Basin?
That did contribute to it, yes.
So for the wastewater fund, like the water utility, we show a similar decrease in revenues. And again, this is due primarily to the recording of the market loss on investments, as mentioned previously. And we also had a slightly lower than anticipated revenue total for the wastewater user fees. Now, the decrease to wastewater fund expenses was due to a couple of factors. One, CIP projects that were budgeted did not occur during the fiscal year, so therefore we did not incur the expenses associated with those. Secondly, we budgeted approximately $2.5 million for payments to Hyperion, but the actual total paid during the fiscal year was $1.7 million. Our next two slides illustrate the activity for the internal service funds. First is the general liability fund. Here, the revenues exceeded budget expectations due in part to the recovery of claims paid. Expenses were under budget due to low operation expenditures and a decreased amount attributed to claims expenses than was anticipated. We want to note that the claims recovery is the highest that it's been in the past 20 years.
Yeah, if I can just add something real quick. So, council, with the 2019-2020 budget, you had authorized a risk manager position. That was a new FTE that was a request I brought to the then city manager, and then we brought it to council, and it was authorized by council. That individual was hired in April of 2021. So it's been a full year since they've been here, Mr. Hank Liu. And, so I ran some statistics on what his performance. And as Liz referenced, the claims recovery for both, this is a general liability fund and workers' comp, is the highest it's been in 20 years. And then there's some other statistics as well, which I'll put together and provide a report for Mr. George, and maybe he can share it with council. But this position, the authorization of that position, is more than paid for itself. It's all in, it's about a $500,000 benefit to the city that he's provided in 1 year.
So as Joe mentioned, the workers' compensation fund here, and again, revenues were higher than expected, and again, due to the recovery of claims that were paid. The expenses are down from the budgeted amount due to a decrease in expenditures related to insurance and bonds, and also claims expenses. And the claims expense is the lowest that it's been in 7 years. And I'll turn it back over to Joe. Thank you.
All right, so the next steps. The audited financial report to council by the end of December, mid-year budget in February, where we'll talk about how to utilize that $12 million that's sitting in unallocated reserves. And then the budget process, we kicked it off in January, strategic planning, maybe sometime in March, budget study sessions, April and May, and proposed adopting the 23-24 budget on June 6th. Does council have any questions at all?
Yeah, please.
On our revenues, what was budgeted and and the actuals, right? Sales tax was number one, right? Do we have any concept, because we brought on, Topgolf is only a little piece of this, right, based upon our fiscal year, but that's a huge sales tax revenue machine. Right, I faintly recall in a one-on-one meeting we had in my first year, you explained like some of our top sales tax earners are like the restaurants on Rosecrans, the Flemings of the world. And I'm pretty sure Topgolf sees more people than Fleming sees. And so I'm curious, do you have any reports to date, first quarter of our fiscal year, that it's like, hey, sales tax is up, or it's flat, or...
So we actually have we use a company called HDL for our sales tax consultant. And they have the ability to go in there and they see everybody that reports, all the companies that report to CDTFA, which is the organization of the state that handles sales tax. So that meeting is coming up, and I'll be able to see, exactly, we'll have Topgolf in there. So this is going to be only through June, though, that...
When did Best Buy close? Because for years that was our biggest sales tax generator. When did that Best Buy close at the point? Did it have been a whole year? Did it miss this one, or is it partially reflected?
No, it's been closed, okay. I think, for at least a year.
And that state agency that you rambled off the acronym for?
CDTFA.
That used to be the BOE,
yes,
correct? Okay,
correct.
Just making sure.
Sorry for the acronyms. Any other questions?
This is a receive and file, so I think we're good. Thank you, Mr. Lillo. Appreciate it. All right, final item for the evening is the extension of license agreements with El Segundo Youth Sports Organizations. Mr. George.
Yes, this presentation will be given by our Recreation and Parks Director, Ali Mancini. By the way, just on Topgolf, just to let you know, we meet with them kind of every other month in terms of just status reports, not necessarily financial reports, but in terms of just numbers, numbers are pretty significant. I mean, in the first 2 months, they did 100,000 people in the first 2 months. And it's already number 2 in their chain behind Las Vegas.
All right. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Bowles and members of the City Council. Staff is before you this evening to recommend the extension of license agreements through the end of fiscal year 22-23 with 8 youth sports organizations identified in the current field and facility use and allocation policy. The 8 organizations include El Segundo AYSO, El Segundo Babe Ruth, El Segundo Girls Softball, El Segundo Lacrosse, El Segundo Little League, El Segundo Inline Hockey, El Segundo Youth Volleyball, and the El Segundo Unified School District. The license agreements lay out conditions of use of city property, namely fields and sports facilities, so that the organizations have space for practice, gameplay, and tournaments. The agreements also describe required insurance types and policy limits. Actual hours of use of the fields is determined biannually when reservations are made based on priority status of each organization as identified in the facility and field use and allocation policy. The original license agreement with each organization were approved by the council in 2015 and were subsequently amended in 2018, 2021, and 2022. The cost to utilize the fields by these groups is determined by player fees of $10 per El Segundo resident and $30 per non-resident, as adopted by the City Council in 2014. The per-player fees have not been raised since the original approval and remain at $10 and $30 respectively. The estimated revenue for fiscal year 22-23 for the player fees is $24,000. The per-player user fees and other policies related to the field and facility use and allocation policy will be discussed next Monday evening in a joint special meeting of the Recreation and Parks Commission and Youth Sports Council. At that meeting, staff will discuss proposed changes to the fees, including per-player fee raises and potential new fees for field or facility rental cancellations for organizations who reserve more space than is needed and neglect to return that space for other use. Staff will then return to the Parks and Recreation Commission and the City Council with an updated field and facility use and allocation policy and potential changes to fees in late 2022 and early 2023, respectively. That concludes my staff report, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
I would just say no one likes to raise fees on these things, but it's important that we make some incremental changes or we end up with something where we have these, much like the business license scenario where things aren't touched for 40 years and you're just not reflecting reality.
I would agree with that.
I have a question. Your budget is like $5.6 million, I believe I saw it there. Is the irrigation costs of all the grass included in your budget?
That's a very good question.
I was just curious because to the pool comment of like cost recovery, right? It doesn't make sense. I think when it comes to our assets, I am so much more concerned with utilization, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're paying to maintain it, let's utilize it, right? If it's there, let's use it.
Right.
You know, our park doesn't have much open space as many parks would have, and yeah, so I think this is good. I think everything about it is great, you know, especially since, you know, these prices were established in 2014, so, you know, a couple days ago. Yeah, I just think utilization should be a conversation that's had with every single one of these user groups, you know, just to say like, hey, well, if you're not using it,
right,
then let's get somebody out there using it.
Right.
You know, there's really no reason. I mean, the fields belong to every single resident of town, not just Little League, not just AYSO, not just Babe Ruth softball, so on and so forth.
Right. Right, and I think we've seen, you know, and I've seen certainly since I've been here that, you know, these are a really important amenity to the community, and I think this is absolutely the right time to take a look at who's using the field and what are they paying to use the field, because certainly we don't want to punish anyone for using the field, but we also, you know, we need them to pay their share of that because they are severely impacted by use of the youth groups.
So in my previous life as a Little League president and softball president, one of the things I became aware of right away is that those two particular user groups use both school fields and city fields.
Right.
So they're getting dinged twice. I remember writing that check as a matter of fact. So that's something I think we need to kind of look at as we start looking at future agreements.
Joint
because
use.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have, you know, high school teams. I understand that. Like, we want everybody on the field. Don't get me wrong. It's not that. But, you know, those two particular groups I know firsthand, they get dinged twice. So I think we have to, I understand there's definitely a need to, you can't keep a $10 fee in place for eternity. It's going to happen. But I just think there's a lot of dots to connect within this whole field usage thing. I think we need to be very accurate as to the amount of time that everyone is using these fields. I mean, really, actually using the fields. Sorry, Ally, I didn't too soon. And I just think it's a good way to kind of take everything on at one time and come up with a reasonable solution for everyone.
Yes.
But thank you.
I agree with that, and staff have been working really hard to make some edits to the policy that we're going to recommend. We're going to start with a recommendation, so we're not just starting with a blank slate. And, we've got really good data to back that up, so I think we're going to have a really productive conversation.
I would recommend, seeing as I'm not going to be here, but that you guys potentially look at having another joint meeting with Parks and Rec Commission when that is discussed, because the last thing you want is for Parks and Rec Commission to deliberate over something, your staff put together a report, it comes up here and then just gets chopped up, right? Doesn't make you happy, doesn't make your staff happy.
Right.
It doesn't make the commission happy, and clearly, and you know that Sports Council is not going to be happy about that either, right? I will say
that's a
this.
great
so,
idea.
I harp on you guys all the time about the condition of the fields. If I step on a soggy patch of grass, you're going to hear about it, right, Daryl?
Yes.
Your shoes are probably still wet.
Me too.
Right?
Absolutely.
But Mayor Boyles, you sent me that picture of Merrick kicking a soccer ball at Stevenson Field, right? Oh, that was Ryan. Okay, yeah. And I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, I played soccer in that field too. And then I looked at the grass. And I thought to myself, because I tell my son all the time how spoiled he is, the fields he gets to play on,
Right.
especially when he plays at campus. It's like, you have no idea what a bad hop is.
Right.
Like, we played on fields that were just lumpy and long grass, short grass, no grass. And so I just want to commend you and your staff for the care that you put into the fields that we have, and how lucky the youth of today is to actually be able to utilize those fields, even though I'm going to continue to harp and demand, nothing but the best.
That's
But,
okay. You represent your constituents.
But yeah, I do think that it would be wise for you guys to sit with
That's a good
Parks
idea.
and Rec Commission and have an open dialogue, not just like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? But like back and forth, like a round table,
Yeah, I hate to be all numbers, but do we have a goal? Are we shooting for, is there some cost recovery thing here? Are we looking at data points from other cities as part of this? I know we studied this to the point earlier that someone made about, we studied the pools and cost recovery ad nauseum. When we actually went out to bid. That was an idea that I had that was fairly unpopular at the time, to go out to bid for the aquatic center to see what the water polo teams and the aquatics programs would come back with. So it's just, I remember, I hate to say it, I'm not going to out the organization, but at one point I was asked to run fundraising sponsorship for an organization, and I said, great. And then the person in charge said, actually, no, dial that back. We don't need the money.
Okay.
We don't pay that much for field space. So to Councilmember Drew's point, I think we need to understand what our goal is here. Are they going to help us? Is this a full-on subsidy of 95%? When I think about $10 for a kid for a season to use a field, I don't know, it just seems...
I'll play devil's advocate a little bit, right? Yes. Little League is rec baseball. AYSO is rec soccer, right? These are not club sports. These are recreational sports that are made off the back, fueled off the back of volunteers. Right? You guys are both on Little League board. I'm pretty sure you are on the AYSO board. You've definitely reffed plenty of games, right? But so to that point, if these, some of these user groups, they're doing the job that, city is not needing to do, right? They do it for the city, right? They're an organization. They're not there to make money. They're there to just provide a service, and they help us to provide a service as a city. So I think that should be taken into account too.
No, I agree, and that's what we did. I believe with ESAC, there was a different consideration for groups that were full-fledged, top-tier water polo programs as compared to recreational instructional.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is
Anyway,
correct.
okay.
So we don't have a plan in place yet to do cost recovery, take a look at that, but that's certainly something I think is not a bad idea, and I would be glad to do that. I'm new here, but I'm really a firm believer that we need to, make it equitable, make it so that it's affordable, but also that we can maintain it, because we're having a real difficult time maintaining the fields because of the use. We need to be able to close the field when it's appropriate. We need to, and again, it's not to be, difficult, it's because we want to protect the resource that we have. So I think it's a really fine balance, so I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to hearing back once you meet with the different stakeholders.
Hey, Mayor, if I could
Yeah.
just add, Councilmember Nicole, your first question about water costs to the fields, they are contained in Ally's budget over in Recreation and Parks.
It's crazy how much gets done with that $5.6 million. What type of asset that is and how our residents see the value in that. When you look at that whole budget, what everything costs us and all that Parks and Recs does and libraries, right? Because libraries got locked in with it too for 5.6.
Agreed. Okay, so we have an item before us to authorize the city manager to extend the license agreements with each El Segundo youth sports organization identified in the Youth Sports Council athletic field facility use and allocation policy for the remainder of 2022, 2023, as you work out what's going to come after that. So
That's
do you have a
correct.
motion to approve?
Nicole, so moved.
Thank you.
Giroux, second.
Excellent. Madam Clerk, please.
Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nicole,
Aye.
and Councilmember Perstuck is now off Zoom. Mayor Pro Tem
Yes.
Pimentel and Mayor Boyle.
Yes. All
Thank
right.
you, Council.
Thank you. Next up, reports. City Clerk. Thank you, Mrs. Mancini. City Clerk, any reports this evening?
Yes. A quick reminder, tomorrow night is the last candidate forum. It will be held at the Women's Club, 6 o'clock. And just to let everybody know, ballot box is now open. Teen Center Vote Center will open Saturday, November 5th and run through November 7th with the hours of 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then Election Day will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Great.
That's all I got for you.
Thank you. Councilmember Giroux.
Just real quick, actually, along that ballot box line, that thing works. I dropped mine off this morning and got a text message before I got here, so that it works really fast. So whatever you did, Trace, really worked well. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nicole.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
We'll have signage for the local travel network for us to approve coming to us after it goes to Public Works, so we can decide if we want a turtle or other logos for the region. Very productive meeting, high-end, lots of really exotic Measure R discussions as we argued over which turtle on a blue background, turtle on a white background. ICRMA, nothing's to report there, and we have sanitation tomorrow, both districts. It's going to be gripping, so we'll talk about effluent cleaning, use of caustic soda for suppression of odors, and other water recycling projects. I'll make sure to keep you all posted and send you instant text messages about the content of the hydrogen sulfide. Other than that, nothing further to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Nothing for me. The city attorney, Mr. Hensley.
Yeah, just briefly, I had mentioned, I believe at the last meeting, that I'd be bringing forward a summary of the legislation. I'm now going to slot that for either late November, early December, because I have to interact with planning, building, safety quite a bit over the numerous housing bills beyond what we've already talked about. Is I think the accessory dwelling unit legislation has now been changed for the 5th time in 8 years, and I assume next year will be 6 and 9. But there's just a lot of changes again on the land use side, and we'll bring that forward in a summary and a lot of other changes. But I guess what I'm long-winded way of saying, I'm about a month behind where I thought I was going to be, because there's a lot of, I don't want to just provide the information. I need to interact with Michael Allen about what that means to El Segundo.
Yeah, you reminded me of something. I just learned recently that Torrance decided to not renew their League of Cities membership. That's a huge deal, and there's a Torrance City Council member, Mike Griffiths, who has been working really hard the last couple of years for to maintain local control. And before the League of Cities conference, you'll remember, Daryl, they were lobbying for signatures to get the League of Cities to take a position. I believe, again, it was for local control, to do more. SB 9 was done at that point, and they didn't get the votes from the league, I don't think.
Well, they got the signatures, but they didn't get
Approval,
they did a hand count to hear the item. And it was voted down by the majority of the people in the General Assembly.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. That's a big city with 250,000 people, and it's a big statement that they have lost faith in the League of Cities being aligned with them and representing their interests for local control. I have a feeling other cities will follow suit. We'll see how that plays out. And were you finished, Mr. Hensley, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. George?
Nothing else to report, Mayor, but regarding the last item, the representative from the league, Jeff, has sent out an email to all the city managers. He'd be willing to come to a council meeting to discuss that with the council if you so desire. So please let me know. We can talk about that.
Yeah, I think Jeff's been great. He works with us on the COG quite a bit in the SCAG meetings. I don't think it's Jeff specifically. I think it's the leadership at COG not wanting to take a position on some of these local control items. But, okay, I just would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge it's my mother's birthday.
Hey, happy birthday.
And Councilmember Perstuck, even though she's in a different time zone. So I think I covered everything. We are adjourned.
Wow.
Thank you.